Chapter 1951. I'll remember it in a second. Wonderful, no pop-up window free read. Following the elder's words, Zhao Qinfeng, who was originally cultivating with his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes. 2 rays of light flashed through his eyes as he coldly said, "Marquis Jinbo is dead?" Marquis Jinbo was the marquis who went to the sword sect. Zhao Qinfeng knew that Marquis Jinbo was going to the sword sect because he was the one who sent Marquis Jinbo. The sword sect suddenly had a new sect master, and it was actually a junior. Zhao Qinfeng naturally had to send people to take a look. In addition, Xiao Qin was holding a sword sect assembly this time, so he couldn't ignore it. Originally, he had the idea of going to the sword sect to intimidate them, but who knew that Marquis Jinbo was actually dead? 2 rays of cold light flashed through Zhao Qinfeng's eyes. Facing Zhao Qinfeng's gaze, the elder respectfully lowered his head and told Zhao Qinfeng about Marquis Jinbo's life tablet shattering. With the life tablet shattered, Marquis Jinbo was definitely dead. Although he didn't know the specifics, Zhao Qinfeng was 80% sure that Marquis Jinbo was killed by the sword sect. Because in the entire Jian province, other than the sword sect, there was no other force that had the ability or the courage to kill Marquis Jinbo. Hearing the elder's words, Zhao Qinfeng was silent for a moment, then coldly said, "Investigate." Zhao Qinfeng had to investigate what exactly happened after Marquis Jinbo went to the sword sect. Hearing Zhao Qinfeng's words, the elder respectfully replied, "Yes." The elder respectfully replied, then retreated. Zhao Qinfeng's gaze looked in the direction of the sword sect, and the killing intent in his eyes slowly gathered. The Black Emperor sect already knew about Marquis Jinbo's death. Regarding this, there was nothing to be surprised about. When Marquis Jinbo was killed, Xiao Qin already knew that this matter couldn't be hidden. After all, as one of the 8 great martial marquis of the Black Emperor sect, the Marquis of Jinbo definitely had a life tablet in the Black Emperor sect. Once his life tablet shattered, the Black Emperor sect would naturally know of his death. Several days had passed in the sword sect, and the various sect leaders had left one after another. At the same time, Xiao Qin had also arranged for the sword sect elders to head to the various factions to select the core juniors to join the sword sect. In the face of the sword sect's actions, although the sect masters of the various major powers were unwilling, no one dared to stop them. Everything was going according to Xiao Qin's plan. Inside the sword sect, under the management of Tsang Xing and Yang Song, things were slowly stabilizing. On this day, Xiao Qin was cultivating as usual. However, Tsang Xing rushed in and bowed respectfully to Xiao Qin. "Sect Master, something has happened." Hearing Tsang Xing's words, Xiao Qin slowly opened his eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" "The Black Emperor sect has declared war." Hearing this, Tsang Xing didn't waste any time and directly replied. After a few days, the Black Emperor sect had clearly investigated the matter of the Marquis of Jinbo. This was not a secret in the first place. After all, when Xiao Qin killed the Marquis of Jinbo's group of 4, it was in front of many sect leaders. Therefore, the Black Emperor sect only needed to casually investigate to find out the truth. After finding out that the Marquis of Jinbo had indeed died at the hands of the sword sect, with the tyrannical nature of the Black Emperor sect, they naturally wouldn't let this matter rest. Therefore, just now, the Black Emperor sect used this as an excuse to declare war on the sword sect. What would come would come. Hearing Tsang Xing's words, Xiao Qin's expression didn't change much. The Black Emperor sect declaring war was something that was expected. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Qin said indifferently, "It's something that's expected. Tell everyone to gather at the Great Hall. Sooner or later, there would be a battle with the Black Emperor sect." This was unavoidable. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Tsang Xing also nodded and respectfully left the courtyard. Not long after, Xiao Qin, Tsang Xing, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Yang Song, and the other upper echelons of the sword sect gathered together in the main hall. everyone already knew about the Black Emperor sect's declaration of war. Sitting on the main seat, Xiao Chen looked at everyone present and slowly said, "The Black Emperor sect has declared war. What should our sword sect do?" Xiao Chen asked. Actually, there was no need to choose. They had to accept the challenge. It was impossible for them to ask for peace, and the Black Emperor sect would not give the sword sect the chance to do so. They had always wanted to take the sword sect for themselves. Now that they had such an excuse, the Black Emperor sect would definitely not stop. Therefore, it was impossible for them to ask for peace. They had to accept the challenge. No one had any objections to this. Hearing everyone's answer, Xiao Chen continued. "Since that's the case, let's accept the challenge. However, the Black Emperor sect is fierce and not easy to deal with. I feel that our goal in this battle is not to defeat the Black Emperor sect, but to let them know the difficulties and retreat. Defeating the Black Emperor sect was still unrealistic with the current strength of the sword sect. Xiao Chen's goal was only to let the Black Emperor sect know the difficulties and retreat. As long as the Black Emperor sect understood one thing, the sword sect was not something that they could eat as they wished. If they wanted to eat the sword sect, the Black Emperor sect would have to be prepared to suffer a great loss. With that, the Black Emperor sect would be fearful and not dare to casually attack the sword sect. Song Xing and the others supported Xiao Chen's idea and didn't object at all. After all, everyone knew how strong the sword sect was. They didn't need to defeat the Black Emperor sect in this battle. They just needed to let them know the difficulties and retreat. Along with Xiao Chen's words, Zhou Song opened his mouth. "However, with just our sword sect, it would be hard to block them. We need to contact Senior Brother for help." The Black Emperor sect had 4 princes who were all End Realm experts. As for the sword sect, only Tsang Xing, Zhou Song, and Wu Huan were End Realm experts. The Black Emperor sect also had a sect leader who was End Realm. This meant that the Black Emperor sect had a total of 5 End Realm experts, while the sword sect only had 3. With that, they did indeed need to ask for Nangongguan's help. Hearing Zhou Song's words, Xiao Chen nodded his head. "I'll contact Senior Brother right away." After the sword sect meeting ended, Zhou Song and Wu Huan remained in the sword sect while Nangongguan and Xiao Xiao returned to family Nangong and Moon Palace respectively. The Black Emperor sect was about to launch a large-scale attack, so they needed family Nangong's help. With that said, Xiao Chen immediately sent a message to Nangongguan. Not long later, Nangongguan replied and told Xiao Chen that she would lead people to Jianzhou as soon as possible. With Nangongguan's help, although the sword sect was still at a disadvantage when facing the Black Emperor sect, they would at least have the strength to fight. After receiving Nangongguan's reply, Xiao Chen looked at Song Xing and the others and said in a low voice, "Quickly prepare. We can't avoid this battle. There will definitely be a battle with the Black Emperor sect. We can use this chance to let the people of the world know that our sword sect isn't a soft persimmon that anyone can bully." Chapter 1952. No matter if it was Xiao Chen, Song Xing, Yang Song, and the others, they all knew that this battle with the Black Emperor sect was unavoidable. If the sword sect wanted to survive, they had to fight with the Black Emperor sect. This was because only by fighting could the sword sect make the Black Emperor sect fear them. Otherwise, if the Black Emperor sect kept thinking about the sword sect wouldn't be able to develop at all. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Song Xing and the others nodded in agreement. Then, they left the main hall one after another. That day, the sword sect accepted the challenge in a high-profile manner. Moreover, many experts of the sword sect had already started to rush to the border between the sword and Bazhou. It seemed like they were going to fight to the death with the Black Emperor sect. Within the cave, as the sect leader of the sword sect, Xiao Chen naturally had to rush to Bazhou. Before he left, Qin Shuru and the others were naturally extremely worried. After all, Xiao Chen's cultivation was only at the small success stage of the immortal emperor realm. In such a large-scale battle, Xiao Chen's cultivation was too low. Compared to Tsang Xing and other End Realm experts, Xiao Chen didn't have any ability to protect himself. Even the aftershock of a single attack was something Xiao Chen probably couldn't block. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that with Xiao Chen's current cultivation, he wouldn't be of much use in this battle. However, he had no choice. As the sect leader of the Sword Sect, Xiao Chen had to go. "Husband, you have to be careful." Although they were extremely worried, Qin Shuru and the others knew that they couldn't persuade Xiao Chen at all. Facing the advice of the 5 women, Xiao Chen smiled and nodded. "Don't worry, I won't do anything. I know my own strength." Xiao Chen did not plan to personally participate in the battle. After all, his cultivation was too low, so participating in the battle was useless. It was even very likely that he would be targeted by the people of the Black Emperor sect. At that time, any elder with a comprehension realm cultivation would be enough to make Xiao Chen suffer. Xiao Chen didn't intend to personally take action. The most important thing in this battle was still Tsang Xing and the others. Furthermore, Xiao Chen's participation was more of a representation of his attitude. After all, Xiao Chen was the sect leader of the Sword Sect. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qin Shuru and the other girls nodded slightly. After that, Xiao Chen bid farewell to his parents and left the Sword Sect with Tsang Xing and the others. Facing the Black Emperor sect, Xiao Chen didn't dare to underestimate them. After all, the strength of the Black Emperor sect was there for all to see. This was why this time, the Sword Sect had sent out all their elites. Pretty much all of their experts had rushed to the Bazhou border to await the arrival of the Black Emperor sect. Just as the Sword Sect was preparing to fight, within the main hall of the Black Emperor sect, the higher-ups of the Black Emperor sect were gathered together. On the main seat, a muscular middle-aged man sat. This person was the sect leader of the Black Emperor sect, He Sui. As the sect leader of a top sect, He Sui's cultivation had reached the peak of the End Realm. One could say that he was not far from breaking through to the End Realm. He was really strong. At this moment, sitting on the main seat, He Sui's face didn't show any signs of nervousness. Compared to the Sword Sect, He Sui and the higher-ups of the Black Emperor sect were much more relaxed. Looking at the people below, He Sui smiled and said, "The Sword Sect, let's take them down this time." His tone was really calm and relaxed. It was as if to He Sui, taking down the Sword Sect was just a simple matter. Hearing He Sui's words, the higher-ups of the Black Emperor sect all laughed coldly. "That's right, we must take down the Sword Sect this time." The Black Emperor sect had been eyeing the Sword Sect for a long time. This time, they would make use of this chance to take down the Sword Sect. At that time, the Black Emperor sect would have a chance to become one of the top 10 Lingtian sects. Of course, to become one of the top 10 Lingtian sects, the key was that He Sui had to break through to the End Realm. To break through to the End Realm naturally wasn't a simple matter. If not, He Sui wouldn't have been stuck at the peak of the End Realm for so many years. However, if he could take down the Sword Sect, He Sui would have the confidence to break through. This was because the Sword Sect had a treasure that could help one break through to the End Realm. This was also the treasure that He Sui wanted the most. One could even say that the reason why He Sui couldn't forget about the Sword Sect was because of this treasure. Obtaining this treasure meant that He Sui had a chance to break through. At that time, the Black Emperor sect could start to charge into the ranks of the top 10 Lingtian sects. A cold intent flashed across his eyes as He Sui said calmly, "A little kid can become the head of a sect. What a joke. Send my orders to enter the Sword Continent. This time, I will make the final decision and take down the Sword Sect." Hearing He Sui's words, Zhao Qinfeng and the other higher-ups all stood up and replied respectfully, "Yes." Along with He Sui's orders, the experts of the Black Emperor sect started to rush towards the Sword Continent. With the current situation, the two sides would definitely meet at the border of the Sword Continent and Bazhou. The war seemed to be unavoidable. The various factions within the Ba Prefecture and the Jian Prefecture were extremely nervous at this moment. The Swords Gate and the Black Emperor sect were both overlord-level existences. As the various factions within the two prefectures, they naturally paid close attention to this war. However, overall, everyone favored the Black Emperor sect. No one felt that the Sword sect could defeat the Black Emperor sect. After all, their strength was there for all to see. There weren't many people who knew about the increase in strength of the Sword sect, especially those powers within the Bazhou. They didn't know about the changes within the Sword sect, and only thought that the Sword sect was the same as before. Which was why the various powers within the Bazhou didn't have high hopes for the Sword sect. The young sect leader of the Sword sect really doesn't know what he's talking about. He actually dares to start a war with the Black Emperor sect. That's right. I don't think there's any suspense in this war. The Sword sect will probably cease to exist after this. Sigh, what a pity. The Sword sect used to be one of the top 10 Ling Tian sects back then. Now it's in such a situation. There's no such thing as an everlasting power in this world. It was once glorious, but now it's in decline. It's very normal. The Sword sect probably won't be able to escape this time. The various powers within the Bazhou believed that the Sword sect would definitely not be able to escape this time and would definitely be annihilated by the Black Emperor sect. In the eyes of the world, the Sword sect didn't have the ability to go against the Black Emperor sect. Moreover, the Black Emperor sect had launched a large-scale attack this time and didn't give the Sword sect any chance at all. Many people seem to have already seen the scene of the Sword sect being annihilated. In the face of the impending war between the two sects, countless people in the Great Thousand World were paying attention to it. Even the other four great sects, which were also first-rate powers like the Black Emperor sect, were paying attention to the war. In the He Prefecture, which was extremely far away from the Bazhou and the Jian Prefecture, two white-clothed old men were sitting opposite each other on a mountain peak that was surrounded by clouds. They were sipping tea as they spoke. The Black Emperor sect has indeed made a move on the Sword sect. Looks like He Sui, that old fellow, still hasn't forgotten about the Sword sect's treasure. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1953. In the thousands of worlds, numerous people were watching the battle between the Sword sect and the Black Emperor sect. No one had high hopes for the Sword sect. Everyone felt that the Sword sect would definitely lose. Under everyone's gazes, the experts of the Sword sect and Black Emperor sect finally met at the border of the Jian and Bazhou. Leading the experts of the Sword sect, Xiao Chun had been waiting there for a long time. On this day, the experts of the Black Emperor sect arrived. There weren't many of them, only a few thousand. However, they were all experts. The 4 kings and the 7 martial marquises were all present. This time, the Black Emperor sect came out in full force and didn't give the Sword sect any chance at all. In the sky, the experts of the two sects faced each other. As the sect leader of the Sword sect, Xiao Qin naturally stood in front of the crowd. Opposite Xiao Qin was He Sui, who was coldly sizing up Xiao Qin. "You are the little kid sect leader of the Sword sect?" He Sui obviously didn't care about Xiao Qin at all. In his eyes, Xiao Qin was too young and his cultivation was too low. Such a person wasn't worth He Sui's attention. Facing He Sui's question, Xiao Qin replied calmly, "That's right." Facing an end-realm expert like He Sui, Xiao Qin naturally felt a lot of pressure. However, he had no choice and could only brace himself. The Black Emperor sect definitely wouldn't give the Sword sect any chance. Hearing Xiao Qin's reply, He Sui smiled. "Since that's the case, then bring the Sword sect to my Black Emperor sect. I won't treat you badly." The moment he opened his mouth, he wanted Xiao Qin to surrender. Hearing that, Xiao Chen didn't hesitate to shake his head and reject. Surrender? Do you think that's possible? It was obviously impossible to make the sword sect surrender. Seeing that, a cold intent flashed across He Sui's eyes. He then said calmly, "Since that's the case, then don't blame me for being merciless." As he said that, Zhao Qinfeng and the other experts all released shocking auras. Since Xiao Chen wasn't willing to surrender, the Black Emperor sect naturally didn't need to hold back. Just as Zhao Qinfeng and the other experts from the Black Emperor sect were about to make their move, Xiao Qin, Song Xing, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, and Nangong Guan also stepped forward. Their auras were no weaker than Zhao Qinfeng and the others. The four End Realm experts felt the auras of Song Xing and the others. He Sui, Zhao Qinfeng, and the others' expressions all changed. They didn't expect that the Sword Sect would actually have four End Realm experts. Four End Realm experts. Such strength was enough to fight against the Black Emperor sect. Moreover, Song Xing and the others who came out showed that the Sword Sect had the advantage in terms of Dao Realm strength. Originally, with the addition of Dong Hu and Yenling, the Sword Sect already had 6 sword heads. At this moment, along with the help of the family Nangong, there were 2 family Nangong Dao Realm experts who came along with Nangong Guan. With that, the Sword Sect had 8 Dao Realm experts. On the other hand, the Black Emperor sect only had 7 Dao Realm experts. Originally, they had 8 martial marquises, but Marquis Jinbo had been killed by Xiao Chen. Now, the Black Emperor sect only had 7 Dao Realm martial marquises left. His expression was a bit ugly. The strength of the Sword Sect had completely exceeded his expectations. He stared at Xiao Chen, and at the same time, he swept his gaze over Song Xing and the others. Nangong Guan, Wu Huan, Zhou Song. He Sui recognized Nangong Guan and the others. When he saw the 3 of them, he said coldly. When she heard He Sui's words, Nangong Guan laughed coldly. He Sui, Xiao Chen is our junior brother. I advise you to stop. If you continue fighting, both sides will suffer. Xiao Chen was the junior brother of Nangong Guan and the others. When he heard this, a strange light flashed in He Sui's eyes. In the Great Thousand World, many people knew of Nangong Guan and the others' identities. They were the disciples of the Sovereign Emperor. Since Xiao Chen was their junior brother, didn't that mean that Xiao Chen was also the Sovereign Emperor's disciple? He Sui didn't expect this, but it was impossible for him to stop now. He Sui had come with great fanfare and then left without saying a word. That was why, even though the Sword Sect's strength was much stronger than he had expected, He Sui still didn't have any intention of retreating. He Sui's expression was ugly, and he no longer had his previous calmness. He said coldly, "So what? Today, I will definitely flatten the Sword Sect. Kill." It was impossible for him to retreat so easily. Along with He Sui's words, the experts of the Black Emperor sect all attacked. Seeing this, Song Xing, Nangong Guan, and the others naturally attacked as well. The experts of the 2 sects started fighting in the sky. Facing such a battle, Xiao Chen obviously couldn't interfere. Not to mention a battle between End Realm experts, even if it was a battle between Comprehension Realm experts, Xiao Chen didn't have much of a chance of winning. Xiao Chen didn't attack. The intense battle between the experts of the other 2 sects wasn't as one-sided as the Black Emperor sect had expected. On the contrary, the strength of the 2 sects was extremely close. For a moment there was no clear victor. He Sui also didn't attack. Looking at the Sword Sect that had suddenly become so much stronger, He Sui's expression was extremely ugly. Thinking about it, it made sense. They thought that the Sword Sect was a piece of fatty meat that they could eat at any time, but now it had become a hard rock. This made the Black Emperor sect feel like they had nowhere to eat. Looking at the people in the intense battle, He Sui's expression became uglier and uglier. In the end, He Sui also chose to attack, charging towards Song Xing. He Sui was also an End Realm expert. When he attacked, Song Xing couldn't hold on for much longer. However, to kill an End Realm expert like Song Xing wasn't an easy matter. In terms of End Realm experts, the Sword Sect wasn't as strong as the Black Emperor Sect. However, apart from that, in terms of Dao Realm and Comprehension Realm, the Sword Sect was actually stronger than the Black Emperor Sect due to the help of the family Nangong. With that, the direction of the battle gradually became clear. In terms of End Realm experts, the Black Emperor Sect had the advantage. In terms of Dao Realm and Comprehension Realm, the Sword Sect had the advantage. Song Xing tried his best to defend against the combined attacks of Zhao Qinfeng and He Sui. Although he wasn't their match, Song Xing was still holding on. At the same time, in the Dao Realm level battle, the 7 martial marquises of the Black Emperor Sect were slowly at a disadvantage under the combined attacks of Yang Song, Dong Hu, and the 2 family Nangong experts. Especially one of the martial marquises who was facing the combined attacks of Yan Ling and Qianling. He was already heavily injured and the one-sided situation that he expected didn't appear. The 2 sides were fighting and they were actually locked in a stalemate. All of a sudden, He Sui was furious. After all, this wasn't the result that he wanted to see. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1954. The main reason why He Sui dared to attack the Sword Sect with such fanfare was because the Sword Sect was too weak. With the Black Emperor Sect's strength, it would not be too difficult to take down the Sword Sect. It was precisely because He Sui felt that it would be easy to take down the Sword Sect and would not make the Black Emperor Sect pay too much of a price that he decisively attacked the Sword Sect. Otherwise, if he had to pay a huge price to take down the Sword Sect, He Sui would probably have to weigh the pros and cons. This was because if the Black Emperor Sect suffered too great of a loss, it would be unknown if they could continue to remain as a first-rate force, let alone become one of the top 10 Ling Tian sects. At that time, even if they took down the Sword Sect, the gains would not make up for the losses. Compared to the stable relationship between the top 10 Ling Tian sects, the competition between the first-rate forces was extremely intense. This was because they had already surpassed the ranks of the first-rate forces and had the possibility of becoming one of the top 10 Ling Tian sects. As such, who would not want to become an Ling Tian sect? Therefore, a first-rate force like the Black Emperor sect had to consider carefully before doing anything. It was very likely that they would fall out of the ranks of the first-rate forces if they were not careful. Originally, He Sui thought that the attack on the Sword Sect this time would be a sure thing and they would be able to end the battle easily. However, from the looks of it now, He Sui had to admit that he had underestimated the Sword Sect. With the Sword Sect's strength, the Black Emperor sect would definitely have to pay a heavy price if they wanted to take it down. To be honest, the Black Emperor sect could not afford to pay such a price. Although the Sword Sect's treasure was very tempting, He Sui was willing to give up the treasure if he had to pay the price of crippling the Black Emperor sect. However, He Sui was already in a difficult situation. The Black Emperor sect had come aggressively. If he retreated now, wouldn't he become a joke? Seeing that the battle had entered a stalemate, He Sui was furious and helpless. He really wanted to take down the Sword Sect in one fell swoop. However, based on the current situation, it was probably impossible. Even if he could take it down, the price that the Black Emperor sect had to pay would be at least a few times or even a dozen times more than what he had expected. Seeing the experts of the Black Emperor sect fall one by one, of course, the Sword Sect also suffered many casualties. However, even though they had suffered the same number of casualties, He Sui's heart was still bleeding. This was because they were in different positions. The Sword Sect was fighting with their backs against the wall, so it didn't matter even if they were completely annihilated. However, the Black Emperor sect was different. It was impossible for the Black Emperor sect and the Sword Sect to end in mutual destruction. Currently, the Sword sect had the same mentality. Didn't the Black Emperor sect want to take down the Sword sect? Alright, then both sides would suffer. At most, the Sword sect would be annihilated. However, the Black Emperor sect would definitely fall from the ranks of the super first-rate forces. At that time, let alone charging into the top 10 Ling Tian sects, it was hard to say if they could even protect themselves. At this moment, the Sword sect was willing to sacrifice themselves to drag the King of Hell down from his high horse. It was also because of the Sword sect's mentality that He Sui was extremely furious. However, there was nothing he could do. The battle was still going on. Seeing the number of casualties from both sides increasing, He Sui's mood became more and more uncomfortable. Even though Tsang Xing was already at the end of his rope, He Sui still didn't feel any joy. This was because the price that the Black Emperor sect had paid had far exceeded He Sui's expectations. Just as He Sui was extremely furious, Xiao Chen, who didn't join the battle, suddenly spoke. Sect leader He Sui, can we stop and talk? Xiao Chen took the initiative to speak with He Sui. This was actually an act of helplessness. This was because if the battle continued, a martial marquis from the Black Emperor sect might die here. However, at the same time, Tsang Xing probably wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. Seeing that Tsang Xing had already reached his limit, Xiao Chen naturally couldn't just watch him die on the spot. Moreover, Xiao Chen had already achieved his goal. He used his actions to tell the Black Emperor sect that if they wanted to take down the Sword sect, they had to at least be prepared to lose their teeth. In this way, there was a possibility for both sides to negotiate. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, He Sui's expression was extremely ugly. However, he still shouted, "Stop!" Just like Xiao Chen, He Sui didn't have any intention of continuing the battle. It was completely because the Sword sect's strength had surprised He Sui. He Sui couldn't possibly pay such a huge price in exchange for a Sword sect. If the battle continued, his Black Emperor sect would lose another Dao realm almighty. Therefore, He Sui immediately chose to stop. Along with He Sui's shout, the experts from the Sword sect and Black Emperor sect stopped one after another. Then, Xiao Chen and He Sui came to the front of the two sides and stood opposite each other. Both sides were sizing each other up. Looking at Xiao Chen before him, apart from feeling that Xiao Chen was young, He Sui also felt a strong sense of fear. This junior was indeed not simple. He had really underestimated him previously. He Sui said coldly without any expression, "Sect leader Xiao Chen, your Sword sect is now like the sun setting in the west. Join my Black Emperor sect and we'll charge into the 10 great Ling Tian sects together. Wouldn't that be great?" He Sui's tone and attitude had undergone a subtle change. After all, the Sword sect was no longer a fat piece of meat in the mouth of the Black Emperor sect. It was meaningless to be as arrogant as before. He Sui wanted to rope in the Sword sect. However, Xiao Chen shook his head and said, "Sect leader He Sui, there's no need to think about letting the Sword sect join the Black Emperor sect. Everyone in the Sword sect would rather die in battle than to change sections." Xiao Chen's attitude was very unyielding. Of course, this was also because the Sword sect's strength had skyrocketed. If the Sword sect was still the same as before, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't speak to He Sui in such a manner. Moreover, if He Sui didn't have the strength to make He Sui fearful, he probably wouldn't waste his breath with Xiao Chen based on his character. It was because it was extremely difficult to take down the Sword sect now. Therefore, He Sui chose to negotiate with Xiao Chen. Without strength, you didn't even have the qualifications to negotiate. After all, the other party could easily destroy you, so what right did they have to negotiate with you? Without the corresponding bargaining chip, the negotiation was naturally impossible. He knew very well what He Sui was thinking. He also knew that He Sui didn't want to continue fighting because the end result would only be a lose-lose situation for both sides. Such an outcome wouldn't benefit either the Sword's Gate or the Black Emperor sect. A cold light flashed in He Sui's eyes when he faced Xiao Chen's unyielding attitude. Xiao Chen, do you really think that my Black Emperor sect can't do anything to your sword sect? I believe that the Black Emperor sect can destroy the sword sect. However, sect leader He Sui, can you bear the price? If you insist on fighting, I think that the Black Emperor sect will probably fall from the ranks of the super first-rate forces. Xiao Chen said indifferently when he heard this. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1955. I remember it in 1 second. Exciting, no pop-up window free reading. It was undeniable that the Black Emperor sect had the ability to wipe out the Sword sect. After all, in terms of strength, the Sword sect and the Black Emperor sect still had some differences. Not to mention other things, but just the number of End Realm experts, the Sword sect couldn't compare to the Black Emperor sect. Including He Sui, the Black Emperor sect had a total of 5 End Realm experts. Moreover, He Sui could be said to be the strongest existence in the End Realm. On the other hand, the Sword sect only had 3 End Realm experts. Even including Nangong Guan, they only had 4. In terms of strength, they still couldn't compare to the Black Emperor sect. However, Xiao Chen directly said that even if the Black Emperor sect had the ability to wipe out the Sword sect, the price wasn't something that the Black Emperor sect could bear. Or rather, He Sui wasn't willing to bear such a price just to wipe out the Sword sect. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the coldness in He Sui's eyes became thicker and thicker. He stared right at Xiao Chen. Facing He Sui's gaze, Xiao Chen didn't back down and stared back at him. The two of them stared at each other. After a while, He Sui suddenly laughed out loud. Haha, good. What a new sect leader of the Sword sect. I have underestimated you. Before this, he had always treated Xiao Chen as a junior. However, it seemed like he was wrong. From the short contact he had with Xiao Chen, he could tell that this kid wasn't ordinary. Especially his temperament, it made He Sui sigh in admiration. His methods were extremely shrewd and ruthless. His words hit the nail on the head. The current Xiao Chen was grabbing onto the Black Emperor sect's weakness and didn't give He Sui any chance at all. Xiao Chen's attitude was very clear. If you want to fight, then fight. Anyways, when the Sword sect was wiped out, the Black Emperor sect wouldn't have a good time either. Just as Xiao Chen said, He Sui was not willing to bear such a price, nor could he afford it. Therefore, it seemed meaningless to continue. He Sui once again looked at Xiao Chen after his laughter faded. The coldness in his eyes had completely receded. At this moment, He Sui seemed to be chatting with an old friend as he looked at Xiao Chen and spoke indifferently. It's fine if you want me to stop, but shouldn't your Sword sect do something? After all, quite a few people from my Black Emperor sect died this time. He Sui had already decided to give up, but it would be embarrassing if he just let it go like that. Therefore, he would definitely ask for some compensation. Of course, He Sui's purpose in asking for these compensations wasn't to obtain any substantial benefits from the Sword sect. He Sui himself knew that Xiao Chen wouldn't take out anything too precious. The reason he asked for this compensation was nothing more than to give himself a way out. After all, many sects in the Great Thousand World already knew about the war between the Black Emperor sect and the Sword sect. If there was nothing and the Black Emperor sect retreated, wouldn't it be a joke to the world? Therefore, asking for the so-called compensation from Xiao Chen was to save the Black Emperor sect's face. He wanted the world to think that the Black Emperor sect retreated because the Sword sect had given them compensation. The Sword sect had given in, and the Black Emperor sect didn't want to push them too far. Therefore, they chose to give up. Xiao Chen was naturally aware of what He Sui was thinking. Hence, Xiao Chen smiled faintly when he heard He Sui's words. After which, he took out a storage ring and handed it over to He Sui. Xiao Chen had already guessed that He Sui would definitely ask for compensation, so he was already prepared. When he saw Xiao Chen take out a storage ring, a strange look flashed across He Sui's eyes. He thought to himself, it seems like this kid has already planned this out. He's not simple with such wisdom. Xiao Chen had indeed planned this out. In the beginning, the sword sect didn't have any intention of compensating. The reason was very simple. At that time, He Sui simply didn't care about the compensation from the sword sect. At that time, He Sui wanted the entire alliance. Therefore, even if Xiao Chen took out compensation, it would be useless. However, it was different now. After this battle, He Sui had clearly seen the changes in the sword sect. He also knew that the sword sect was no longer a soft persimmon that could be easily pinched. As a result, if Xiao Chen took out a compensation that was based on the difference in status, as long as He Sui didn't take it seriously, he would definitely accept it. Just as Xiao Chen thought, He Sui accepted the storage ring without any hesitation when he saw Xiao Chen take out the storage ring. However, after He Sui checked the items in the storage ring, his expression became a little strange. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, but the cold light in his eyes condensed again. The reason for He Sui's change was entirely because of the compensation that Xiao Chen gave him. He was simply treating him like a beggar. There were only 10,000 spiritual stones, and they were all middle-grade spiritual stones. Next were various types of elixirs, but the highest grade was only at the immortal grade. In addition, there were talismans, spirit fruits, spirit herbs, and other miscellaneous items. However, their value wasn't high. In the eyes of an expert at He Sui's level, the compensation that Xiao Chen gave was simply trash. None of it could catch his eye. It was indeed treating him like a beggar. However, in the face of He Sui's cold gaze, Xiao Chen didn't care at all. He continued to look at He Sui with a calm face. Xiao Chen had absolute confidence that even if He Sui was unhappy, he would definitely accept the storage ring. As expected, after coldly staring at Xiao Chen for a moment, He Sui laughed dryly and said, "Haha, sect leader Xiao Chen is too polite. How can I accept such a valuable gift?" Although He Sui said this, it wasn't difficult to tell from his expression that he was actually forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart. However, Xiao Chen acted as if he didn't see He Sui's anger and smiled faintly. "Sect leader He Sui is too polite. It's just a small token of my respect. After all, our sects are neighbors and we have to get along well in the future. As for this matter, it is indeed a misunderstanding. The death of Marquis Jean Bo in the sword sect was a complete accident. It was also an unintentional mistake. I hope that sect leader He Sui can understand." Xiao Chen gave He Sui enough face and also gave him a way out. However, He Sui didn't feel good when he heard Xiao Chen's words. Especially when he heard that Xiao Chen said that Marquis Jean Bo's death was an accident. He Sui almost couldn't hold back the anger in his heart. "Damn it, you ordered the death of Marquis Jean Bo in front of so many people. Now, you're telling me that it was an accident and an unintentional mistake? Who would believe that?" Looking at Xiao Chen, who didn't have a red face and wasn't panting, He Sui discovered that this person's skin was extremely thick. He didn't even have a red face and wasn't panting when he spoke nonsense. Taking a deep breath and forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart, He Sui revealed an extremely ugly smile and said, "Haha, since that's the case, I'll let it go this time. However, I hope that sect leader Xiao Chen will take care of yourself in the future." "Of course. However, I also hope that when the guests of the Black Emperor sect come to my sword sect in the future, it would be best to inform me first. Otherwise, if something like Marquis Jean Bo happens again, I would really be letting sect leader He Sui down." Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled and replied, "Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1956. Xiao Chen did not care about He Sui's anger at all. When He Sui heard this, He snorted coldly and did not say anything else. He immediately left with the Black Emperor sect. He came aggressively, but the strength that the sword sect displayed made he sway furious and shocked at the same time. It was no longer something that could be manipulated by others. As such, even if the Black Emperor sect still coveted the sword sect, they would have to think twice before making a move on the sword sect in the future. Moreover, there was another reason that made He Sui choose to stop, and that was Xiao Chen's identity as Jun Wuya's disciple. He Sui naturally knew about Jun Wuya. The strongest person in the Great Thousand World was not a joke. Although Jun Wuya did not belong to any sect in his life, it was not an exaggeration to say that Jun Wuya alone was enough to reach a great sect. In the Great Thousand World, only the 10 great Lingtian sects were qualified to go against Jun Wuya. A super force like the Black Emperor sect was not qualified. Firstly, the strength of the sword sect was beyond his expectations. Secondly, it was because of Jun Wuya. Therefore, He Sui chose to retreat. When the people of the Black Emperor sect retreated, Xiao Chen secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although he knew that this was only temporary, at least the Black Emperor sect would not easily provoke the sword sect for a period of time. This could be considered as giving the sword sect some time to breathe. Xiao Chen came in front of the seriously injured Song Xing and asked with concern, "How are you? Are you all right?" "Sect leader, don't worry. I can still hold on," Song Xing said with some difficulty when he heard Xiao Chen's words. Song Xing was indeed difficult to deal with when facing the joint attack of Zhao Qinfeng and He Sui. If it was not for Xiao Chen stopping them in time, Song Xing would probably be in danger. Fortunately, although Song Xing's injuries were serious, at least his life was not in danger. As for the following period of recuperation, his injuries would naturally recover. Now that they had successfully blocked the Black Emperor sect, everyone in the sword sect felt a lot more relaxed. Nangong Guan also followed them back to the sword sect. After safely arriving at the sword sect, Song Xing went to rest, while Xiao Chen went to see Qin Shuru and the other women. After reporting that they were safe, he and Nangong Guan strolled around the sword sect. This time, they had successfully blocked the Black Emperor sect. This was indeed good news for the Swords Gate. Looking at the current disciples of the Swords Gate, all of them felt elated. Even the Black Emperor sect could not do anything to the Swords Gate. For a moment, the many disciples of the Swords Gate felt a sense of pride from the bottom of their hearts. At the same time, because of this battle, Xiao Chen's prestige in the sword sect had greatly increased. Although he was still young, Xiao Chen had brought changes to the sword sect ever since he became the sword sect's sect leader. In such a short period of time, the sword sect's strength had greatly increased. This made the disciples who were not very convinced of Xiao Chen's strength to accept him wholeheartedly. For the time being, the crisis had been averted. However, Nangong Guan still reminded Xiao Chen, "Junior brother, we still have to guard against the Black Emperor sect." Nangong Guan was worried that Xiao Chen would let down his guard against the Black Emperor sect, so she couldn't help but remind him. Although they had successfully forced the Black Emperor sect to retreat this time, the main reason for this was because He Sui had too many misgivings. Moreover, even if He Sui chose to retreat this time, this was only temporary. He Sui still coveted the sword sect, but because the sword sect's strength had increased, He Sui had some misgivings in his heart. However, once He Sui made a move against the sword sect again, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with him. At that time, He Sui would definitely be fully prepared. Hearing Nangong Guan's words, Xiao Chen nodded and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I know." Xiao Chen naturally knew that the threat of the Black Emperor sect was far from being resolved. After all, the current sword sect's strength was still inferior to the Black Emperor sect. Therefore, He Sui still coveted the sword sect. One was not afraid of thieves stealing, but one was afraid of thieves remembering. Therefore, to truly resolve the threat of the Black Emperor sect, there was still a long way to go. Of course, the most fundamental point was the strength of the Sword Sect. If the Sword Sect's strength could surpass the Black Emperor Sect, then they naturally wouldn't have to worry about the threat of the Black Emperor Sect. Xiao Chen was very clear about this point. Seeing that Xiao Chen didn't relax in the slightest because of this victory, Nangong Guan also felt relieved. This was good. For the time being, they had a chance to catch their breath. What Xiao Chen needed to do next was to use this time to increase the strength of the Sword Sect and himself. Only then would they have the confidence to not fear the Black Emperor Sect. He was thinking about how to increase the strength of the Sword Sect. He had already used all the resources he could use. Next, if he wanted to increase the strength of the Sword Sect in a short period of time like before, it wouldn't be so easy. While he was thinking about what to do next, the outside world was in an uproar because of the battle between the Black Emperor Sect and the Sword Sect. Countless people were shocked by the result of this battle. Originally, they thought that the Sword Sect would be doomed in the face of the Black Emperor Sect's large-scale attack. But who would have thought that the Black Emperor Sect would actually retreat after the battle between the two sides? Although the Black Emperor Sect said that the Sword Sect had compensated them and that the matter of Jin Bo Ho was a misunderstanding, the people weren't stupid. They naturally knew that the matter couldn't be so simple. The so-called misunderstanding was just an excuse. After all, with the character of the Black Emperor Sect, even if it was a misunderstanding, they absolutely wouldn't let the Sword Sect go. Moreover, when Xiao Chen killed Jin Bo Ho, many people saw it with their own eyes. How could it be a misunderstanding? In the next few days, the news of the battle between the Sword Sect and the Black Emperor Sect quickly spread. All the major forces were shocked. The Sword's Gate had actually withstood the attack of the Black Emperor Sect, forcing the Black Emperor Sect to retreat helplessly. No one had expected such a result before the start of the war. However, the ones who were most shocked were the major forces in the Jian province. Originally, they were thinking that if the Sword Sect was defeated this time, then the Jian province would probably fall into the hands of the Black Emperor Sect from now on. Many people were already prepared to change sections. But who would have thought that the final result would be the Black Emperor Sect retreating and the Sword Sect wouldn't suffer too much of a blow? The result was unexpected, but it was undeniable that the Jian province would still be under the control of the Sword Sect after this battle. Moreover, this situation might not change for a long time in the future. As for the major forces in the Jian province, if they wanted to survive in the Jian province, their only choice was to be loyal to the Sword Sect. There was no other way. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1957. After temporarily resolving the threat from the Onyx Emperor Sect, everyone in the Sword Sect could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Xiao Chen naturally began to cultivate in seclusion again. As the sect master of the Sword Sect, the resources Xiao Chen could use were naturally unimaginable in the past. In order to raise his cultivation as quickly as possible, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't be stingy with these cultivation resources. There was a Heaven's Spirit Pagoda in the Sword Sect, and this Heaven's Spirit Pagoda was the most suitable for Xiao Chen. According to Tsang Xing and the others, this Heaven's Spirit Pagoda could help Xiao Chen break through to the realm of enlightenment. He prepared to enter seclusion in the Heaven's Spirit Pagoda, but before that, Xiao Chen arranged for people to go to the Eight Desolates world to pick up Chen Yu and the others. After all, the matters in the Sword Sect had basically stabilized. It was time to bring Chen Yu and the others over. After dealing with Chen Yu and the others, early in the morning, Xiao Chen, accompanied by Tsang Xing and Yang Song, arrived at the entrance to a small world in the depths of the Sword Sect. The entrance to the small world led to the Heaven's Spirit Pagoda. Standing beside Xiao Chen, Tsang Xing said, "Sect Master, this Heaven's Spirit Pagoda has a total of 7 floors. The spiritual energy in each floor is different. With the Sect Master's foundation, you can directly cultivate on the 7th floor." The Heaven's Spirit Pagoda was a cultivation treasure in the Sword sect. Normally, if the disciples of the Sword sect wanted to enter, they had to have enough contribution points. However, as the sect master, Xiao Chen naturally didn't need that. Moreover, Song Xing also suggested that Xiao Chen directly cultivate on the 7th floor because the spiritual energy there was the densest. It was also the most helpful for Xiao Chen's cultivation. Hearing Song Xing's words, Xiao Chen nodded slightly and said, "Yes." Xiao Chen did not have to worry about the Sword sect for the time being. With Song Xing and the others handling it, Xiao Chen was very relieved. The most important thing now was to improve his own strength. Breaking through his own strength was the most important thing for Xiao Chen. After leaving the matters of the Sword sect to Song Xing and Yang Song, Xiao Chen stepped into the Heaven's Pagoda. It was said that the Heavenly Spirit Pagoda was a supreme treasure that could absorb and store the spiritual energy of the world. The heaven-breaking sword Venerable had obtained it in an ancient ruin. It had been left in the Sword sect ever since, becoming one of the favorite cultivation realms for the disciples of the Sword sect. After passing through the entrance, Xiao Chen directly entered the Heaven's Pagoda. However, this was only the first floor. As far as the eye could see, there were many disciples cultivating on the side branches. There were many disciples cultivating on the first floor. After casually looking around, Xiao Chen did not stop and directly walked to the 2nd floor. The Heaven's Pagoda had a total of 7 floors. Every time you passed a floor, you had to show your identity token. Otherwise, you would not be able to pass. For ordinary disciples, if they wanted to go to a higher floor, they would need to have enough contribution points. Without contribution points, they would not be able to pass. However, Xiao Chen did not have this problem. With the heaven-breaking sword token in hand, Xiao Chen smoothly walked all the way to the 7th floor of the Heaven's Pagoda. Compared to the 1st floor, where there were many disciples cultivating, the 7th floor was completely empty. Moreover, the area was much smaller than the 1st floor. However, in terms of spiritual energy, the 7th floor was at least 10 times more dense than the 1st floor. The spiritual energy was so dense that just taking a breath here would make one feel extremely happy. When Shui Rou and the others are done with their seclusion, I can let them come to the Heaven's Pagoda to cultivate. The dense spiritual energy made Xiao Chen feel comfortable. At the same time, he secretly thought that he could let Qin Shuru, Long Qing, and the others come to the Heaven's Pagoda to cultivate in the future. After sighing softly, Xiao Chen sat down in the side branch, closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. This time, Xiao Chen's main purpose of seclusion was to make a breakthrough in his cultivation. Now that he was at the initial Celestial Emperor realm, Xiao Chen's goal was to make use of the dense spiritual energy on the 7th floor of the Heaven's Pagoda to raise his cultivation to the Great Perfection Celestial Emperor realm. After that, he could use other methods to break through to the Comprehension realm. With such rich spiritual qi, it would not be difficult for Xiao Chen to make a breakthrough in his cultivation. Moreover, in order not to damage his foundation, Xiao Chen had also made sufficient preparations. He had brought a lot of foundation establishing pills with him. The foundation establishment pill was not a high-grade pill. Its grade was only at the celestial skill level and had not surpassed the celestial grade. However, the foundation establishment pill could only be found in the Great Thousand World and had never been found in the 8 Wastelands world. The function of the foundation establishment pill was relatively simple. Its only function was to stabilize one's foundation. With the help of the foundation establishment pill, one's foundation would not be affected. This was also the reason why Xiao Chen dared to make a breakthrough so quickly. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would never do something so stupid as to damage his own foundation just because he wanted to make breakthroughs in his cultivation base quickly. Not only Xiao Chen, but Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and Qin Shuru had also taken the foundation establishment pill when they were in closed-door cultivation. Now that his status had risen, Xiao Chun naturally did not need to save on pills like the Foundation Establishment pill. The Sword Sect still had this little bit of foundation. Xiao Chun directly went into closed-door cultivation in the Heaven Pagoda. Time passed day by day, and all the affairs in the Sword Sect were handed over to Tsang Xing and Yang Song to handle. The external threat was temporarily resolved, and the Black Emperor sect did not make any move. After this battle, the Black Emperor sect also knew that if they wanted to make a move on the Sword Sect, they could no longer act as casually as before. Without the external threat, the development of the Sword Sect naturally went smoothly. The control of the Sword Province was also carried out in an orderly manner according to Xiao Chen's plan. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. During these 5 years, Xiao Chen had been in closed-door cultivation in the Heaven Spirit Valley. On the other hand, Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing had already come out of closed-door cultivation. After coming out of closed-door cultivation, their cultivation had also broken through to the Celestial Emperor realm. Their cultivation had also broken through very quickly. Everything seemed to be going in a good direction. However, while Xiao Chen was in closed-door cultivation, in a valley in the Wu province, the new mountain gate of the Bloody Blade Valley was located there after they evacuated. When they had evacuated from the Sword Province, the Bloody Blade Valley had come to the Wu province. However, the people of the Bloody Blade Valley had never forgotten about returning to the Sword Province. However, due to the strength that had erupted in the battle between the Sword Sect and the Black Emperor Sect, the Bloody Blade Valley did not dare to make the slightest move. Now, the Bloody Blade Valley seemed to be a little restless. After so many years, the Bloody Blade Valley could be considered to have established a foothold in the Wu province. Moreover, they had also joined forces with a major force in the Wu province, the Sky Sword Sect. At this moment, 2 middle-aged men were sitting opposite each other in the main hall of the Bloody Blade Valley. One of them was the Valley Master of the Bloody Blade Valley, Lin Gang. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1958. The middle-aged man sitting opposite Lin Gang was the sect leader of the Sky Sword Sect, Li Ku. In the years since the Blood Blade Valley came to Wuzhou, Lin Gang had tried his best to build a good relationship with the Sky Sword Sect. Hence, the relationship between the two sects was very good. Lin Gang looked at Li Ku and said, "Sect leader Li, have you considered my suggestion?" Lin Gang had invited Li Ku to attack the Sword Sect together. Returning to the Sword Sect and destroying the Sword Sect had always been Lin Gang's goal. Similarly, He Ying had been waiting for this opportunity. However, after hearing Lin Gang's words, Li Ku was silent for a moment. Then, he shook his head and said, "Valley Master Lin, the Sword Sect is no longer the same as before. In my opinion, we should think twice about attacking the Sword Sect." The fact that the Sword Sect had forced the Black Emperor Sect to retreat was no secret in the Great Thousand World. Furthermore, many people already knew that the Sword Sect had 3 End Realm experts and 6 Dao Realm experts. Naturally, Li Ku also knew about this. Even the Black Emperor Sect had retreated. Hence, to be honest, Li Ku was a little conservative about attacking the Sword Sect. After all, the Sky Sword Sect was not willing to fight the Sword Sect until both sides suffered losses. Furthermore, the Sky Sword Sect's strength was not even comparable to the Sword Sect. Only by joining forces with the Blood Blade Valley would they have a chance of fighting the Sword Sect. Because of this, Li Ku was not very enthusiastic about attacking the Sword Sect. This was because there were too many dangerous and unstable factors. Hearing Li Ku's words, a cold light flashed in Lin Gang's eyes. However, he did not say anything. After all, Li Ku was the sect leader of the Sky Sword Sect. Lin Gang could not influence his decision. Furthermore, what made Lin Gang even more depressed was that the Sword Sect had increased its strength by so much in such a short period of time. This made Lin Gang feel even more despair. It was impossible to attack the sword sect for the time being, but Lin Gang had not given up. He was constantly planning how to deal with the sword sect. While the Bloody Blade Valley was planning to deal with the sword sect had been developing better and better over the years that Xiao Chun had been in seclusion. Moreover, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, and even fourth senior sister Xiao Xiao had roped in many experts and genius disciples for the sword sect. This allowed the strength of the sword sect to reach a new level in just a few years. At this moment, the sword sect's foundation as one of the top 10 Ling Tian sects was fully demonstrated. Although it had declined as the sword sect showed signs of rising again, some experts were still willing to join the sword sect, especially those sword cultivators. After all, the sword sect used to be a sacred place among the sword cultivators in the world. 10 years had passed since Xiao Chun had gone into seclusion, and the sword sect had gained another end realm expert called Lin Qing. Lin Qing had joined the sword sect and even became an elder of the sword sect. However, when the sword sect fell from its pedestal, Lin Qing was injured and disappeared. After that, he became a wandering cultivator. At that time, following the disappearance of the heaven-breaking sword sovereign, the entire sword sect could be said to have fallen apart. Many experts left one after another. After all, in their eyes, the sword sect without the heaven-breaking sword sovereign was no longer the sword sect in their hearts. Lin Qing was one of the people who left. However, Lin Qing was still loyal. At least he had fought for the sword sect and almost died. Originally, he didn't have any plans to return to the sword sect. However, with the appearance of Xiao Qin, Lin Qing returned. Like Song Xing, Lin Qing also worshipped the heaven-breaking sword sovereign. Since Xiao Chun had obtained the legacy of the heaven-breaking sword sovereign, Lin Qing believed that Xiao Chun was the sect leader of the sword sect. At the same time, because Xiao Chun had led the sword sect to force the Black Emperor sect to retreat, Lin Qing also recognized Xiao Chun's ability. He was willing to believe that the sword sect would rise again under the leadership of Xiao Chun. Therefore, Lin Qing chose to return and join the sword sect once more. After so many years, Lin Qing's cultivation had also broken through from the Dao realm to the current End realm. At this moment, in Song Xing's cave, Lin Qing and Song Xing were sitting together, drinking and chatting. It had been many years since they joined the sword sect. Unfortunately, Xiao Chun had been in seclusion all these years, so Lin Qing hadn't seen Xiao Chun yet. Brother Song Xing, when will the sect leader come out of seclusion? Lin Qing asked after drinking a mouthful of wine. In response to Lin Qing's question, Song Xing smiled and said, "Soon. The sect leader has been in seclusion for 10 years. His cultivation should have broken through to the great circle of the immortal Emperor realm." After 10 years of seclusion, Song Xing reckoned that Xiao Qin was about to come out of seclusion. Lin Qing nodded slightly when he heard Song Xing's words. Then, he sighed and said, "Back when the sword sovereign was still alive, the sword sect was so glorious. Now it has fallen to such a state. Brother Lin Qing, it's true that the sword sovereign has left. However, I believe that under the sect leader's leadership, the sword sect will rise again and become one of the top 10 sects," Song Xing said confidently when he heard Lin Qing's words. Xiao Chun was the successor chosen by the heaven-breaking sword sovereign. As such, Song Xing would unconditionally support and trust Xiao Chun. Moreover, after Xiao Chun became the sect leader, he had done a series of things that made Song Xing believe that the heaven-breaking sword sovereign had chosen the right person. Lin Qing nodded slightly when he heard Song Xing's words. "That's right. Since he is the person chosen by the sword sovereign, I believe that he will be able to lead the sword sect to rise again." "Haha, brother Lin Qing, speaking of which, you haven't seen the sect leader yet. However, I think that the sect leader will be happy to see you." Song Xing laughed and said. Xiao Chun was naturally happy to see Lin Qing. There was no doubt about that. After all, Lin Qing was an End Realm expert. For him to join the sword sect now was like sending charcoal in the snow for the sword sect. Moreover, it wasn't just Lin Qing. Even 2 Dao realm experts joined the sword sect these few years. With that, the strength of the sword sect's upper echelon was much stronger than when they fought the Black Emperor sect 10 years ago. There were 4 End realm experts and 8 sword head level Dao realm expert. With such strength, they could pretty much charge into the top powers. Not only the upper echelon, but the elders, deacons, and various disciples had also become much stronger. Not only in quantity, but also in quality. When Xiao Chun came out of seclusion and saw this scene, even Xiao Chun himself would be shocked. The current Sword's Gate had changed from its previous state of decline. It had begun to flourish like the rising sun, and its strength was constantly increasing. Song Xing had always been aware of this, and he was extremely gratified in his heart. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1959. The sword sect could be said to be rising day by day. All of this was the result of everyone's hard work. Another month passed and Xiao Chun finally came out of the Heaven Spirit Pagoda. After 10 years of seclusion, with the help of the Heaven Spirit Pagoda, Xiao Chun's cultivation had successfully broken through to the peak Celestial Emperor realm. When Xiao Chun came out, Song Xing, Wu Huan, Zhou Song, Lin Qing, and the others were the first to welcome him. Seeing Song Xing and the others, Xiao Chun walked out of the Heaven Spirit Pagoda and said with a smile, "Thank you for your hard work." "Sect leader is too serious," Song Xing smiled and replied. Then, he introduced Lin Qing to Xiao Chun. He heard that while he was in seclusion, the sword sect's strength had greatly increased. Not only did Lin Qing choose to join the sword sect, but there were also 2 Dao realm experts who joined the sword sect. As for the elders and deacons, their strength increased by a lot. Just like what Song Xing said, Xiao Chun was naturally delighted to see Lin Qing. With 1 more End realm expert, it meant that the sword sect had become stronger. Under the escort of Song Xing and the others, Xiao Chun and the others came to the main hall of the sword sect. That day, Xiao Chun used his identity as the sword sect leader to announce that Lin Qing would become the deputy sect leader. At the same time, the 2 Dao realm experts would become the sword head. Following Xiao Chun's announcement, the number of vice leaders of the Sword Gate had increased to 4, and the number of sword heads had increased to 8. Compared to 10 years ago, the Sword Gate's strength had increased significantly. It was good to have a strong foundation. At least it saved Xiao Chun a lot of trouble. Thinking about it, if the sword sect didn't have such a strong foundation, these experts probably wouldn't have chosen to join the sword sect. That night, Xiao Chun personally hosted a banquet to welcome Lin Qing and the rest. Lin Qing naturally did not reject this invitation. This was the first time he had met Xiao Chun. Lin Qing had a good impression of Xiao Chun. Apart from being a little too young, Xiao Chun completely met Lin Qing's standards in all other aspects. Moreover, Xiao Chun was very talented and was the successor of the heaven-breaking sword sovereign. As a result, Lin Qing naturally accepted Xiao Chun wholeheartedly. The banquet lasted until late at night before everyone left. In the next few days, Xiao Chun spent most of his time with Qin Shuru and the other girls. When they heard that Xiao Chun had come out of seclusion, Qin Shuru and the other girls naturally did not have time to cultivate. After all, this time, Xiao Chun had been in seclusion for 10 years. Qin Shuru and the other girls naturally missed Xiao Chun very much. After spending some time with Qin Shuru and the other girls, Xiao Chun also met Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the Wine Daoist. Ever since they came to the sword sect, the 3 of them had been extremely diligent in their cultivation. Now, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the Wine Daoist had all broken through to the immortal Emperor realm. In just over 10 years, the cultivation of the 3 of them had already risen to the immortal Emperor realm. Such an improvement was undoubtedly extremely huge. Xiao Chen was certain of their progress. At the same time, he also told the three of them that they could go to the Heaven's Spirit Tower to cultivate in seclusion. They could only break through to the enlightenment state after their cultivation had risen to the complete immortal Emperor realm. After cultivating in seclusion in the Heaven's Spirit Tower for 10 years, Xiao Chen knew that the Heaven's Spirit Tower was of great help to Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other two girls. In the face of Xiao Chen's suggestion, the three of them agreed without any hesitation. After 10 years of seclusion, Xiao Chen was able to relax for half a month. Then, he once again devoted himself to cultivation. At the same time, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, the Wine Taoist, and Qin Shuru also entered the Heaven's Spirit Tower to cultivate in seclusion. The most important task for everyone was to improve their cultivation. This time, Xiao Chen also planned to break through to the enlightenment state. After all, his current cultivation had completely stabilized at the great perfection of the immortal Emperor realm. He had vaguely touched the threshold of the enlightenment state. He found Zhou Song and Wu Huan. The two of them were end-realm experts. They would obviously be of great help to Xiao Chen in breaking through to the enlightenment state. The three of them sat together. Xiao Chen held a pill the size of a longan in his hand. This pill was called the Enlightenment State Pill. It was a pill refined by the Dan Valley. It could help cultivators break through to the enlightenment state. Junior brother, the enlightenment state is all about the word enlightenment. Enlightenment of the Tao, enlightenment of the heart, and enlightenment of the enlightenment state. If you can comprehend it and break through, success will follow naturally. Sitting beside Xiao Chen, Zhou Song also told Xiao Chen some things to take note of when breaking through to the enlightenment state. To break through to the enlightenment state, one couldn't just blindly cultivate. If one couldn't comprehend it, one might not be able to break through for the rest of one's life. This was also why some people were unable to break through to the enlightenment state in their entire lives. Some people might be able to easily break through to the enlightenment state after a moment of enlightenment. The enlightenment state was all about the word enlightenment. If one could comprehend the tunnel and break through, if one couldn't, then no matter how one cultivated, it would be useless. Hearing Zhou Song's words, Xiao Chen nodded slightly. Then, Zhou Song and Wu Huan left the secret room. Xiao Chen went into seclusion to break through to the enlightenment state. After leaving the secret room, Wu Huan looked at Zhou Song and asked, "Second senior brother, how long do you think junior brother will take to break through to the enlightenment state?" It's hard to say. After all, breaking through to the enlightenment state is about comprehension. It might be fast, or it might be slow. It's not like other realms. Hearing this, Zhou Song shook his head slightly. Back then, Zhou Song took a leap to break through to the enlightenment state. Wu Huan took half a month to break through to the enlightenment state. Fourth junior sister Xiao Xiao only took 3 days to break through to the enlightenment state. Therefore, it was hard to say how long it would take to break through to the enlightenment state. Hearing Zhou Song's words, Wu Huan nodded slightly. Indeed, no one could say for sure how long it would take to break through to the enlightenment state. It might be fast, or it might be slow. He had already taught Xiao Chen everything he could. As for whether he could succeed or not, the key was still Xiao Chen himself. However, with the enlightenment state pill and Xiao Chen's talent, it shouldn't be a big problem. While talking, Zhou Song and Wu Huan left Xiao Chen's cave dwelling. In their opinion, it would take at least a few days for Xiao Chen to break through to the enlightenment state. However, after the two of them left, only one night had passed. In the morning of the second day, before the sun had completely risen, a strong aura suddenly soared from Xiao Chen's cave dwelling. Feeling this aura, Zhou Song and Wu Huan, who were still meditating with their eyes closed in their respective cave dwellings, suddenly opened their eyes. A trace of shock flashed across their eyes. He broke through? In just one night, Xiao Chen had broken through to the endless state. Zhou Song and Wu Huan were shocked. After a while, the two of them appeared outside Xiao Chen's cave dwelling. Sensing the aura that had just broken through to the enlightenment state, the two of them couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. Little junior brother is this the legendary epiphany? He actually broke through in one night. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1960. Zhou Song and Wu Huan didn't know what to say. Not only the two of them, but Song Xing and Lin Qing also rushed to Xiao Chen's cave. When they saw Zhou Song and Wu Huan, Song Xing was the first to speak. Sect leader broke through just like that? He comprehended in one day and broke through in one night. Zhou Song smiled bitterly. Xiao Chen breaking through in one night made Zhou Song speechless. When they heard Zhou Song's words, Song Xing and Lin Qing also smiled bitterly. However, they couldn't help but become excited. The higher Xiao Chen's talent was, the better it was for the sword sect. Only with enough talent would Xiao Chen have a chance to break through to the end realm. As for Song Xing and the others, they probably wouldn't be able to break through to the end realm. Moreover, if the sword sect wanted to return to the top 10 Lingtian sects, they needed a supreme existence above the end realm. Therefore, the higher Xiao Chen's talent was, the better it was for the sword sect. Just as the four of them were talking, Qin Yao slowly walked out of the cave and bowed to Song Xing and the others. Vice sect leader, my young master invites you. Without Xiao Chen's permission, Song Xing and the others naturally couldn't casually enter Xiao Chen's residence. Since Qin Yao came to invite them, it was obvious that after Xiao Chen came out of seclusion, he sensed the arrival of Song Xing and the others. They walked to the front hall and saw Xiao Chen, who had just broken through. The four of them immediately cupped their hands and congratulated him. Congratulations, sect leader, for breaking through to the enlightenment realm. Don't tease me. I'm just in the enlightenment realm. I'm still far from the sect leader of the sword sect. Have a seat. Xiao Chen smiled. Indeed, although Xiao Chen had broken through to the enlightenment realm, he was still far from the sect leader of the sword sect. To truly have the same cultivation as the sect leader of the sword sect, he had to be at least in the end realm. However, although Xiao Chen was still far from the end realm, Xiao Chen's cultivation speed was enough to make one blush with shame. Although Xiao Chen could use the resources of the sword sect as he wished, even with such a huge amount of resources, if Xiao Chen didn't have enough talent and ability, he still wouldn't be able to break through so quickly. This was why Song Xing and the others respected Xiao Chen's talent. With such talent, along with the huge amount of resources from the sword sect, in the eyes of Song Xing and the others, it was only a matter of time before Xiao Chen broke through to the end realm. They didn't disturb Xiao Chen too much. After all, Xiao Chen had just broken through and needed time to stabilize his cultivation. This was why Song Xing, Zhou Song, and the others only congratulated him before leaving. Today, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and Qin Shuru were all cultivating in the Heaven Spirit Pagoda. After breaking through to the enlightenment realm, apart from spending time with his parents, Xiao Chen used the rest of his time to cultivate. Since he had just broken through to the enlightenment realm, his cultivation wasn't stable yet. Naturally, Xiao Chen couldn't relax. While Xiao Chen was cultivating, Lin Gang, Li Ku, and a skinny old man were sitting together in the main hall of the Blood Blade Valley in Wuzhou. Lin Gang said in a deep voice, "Sect leader Li, now that even the deceased demon sect has agreed to join forces, what are you hesitating for?" The deceased demon sect was also a first-rate power. Although it wasn't too strong among the first-rate powers, it couldn't be underestimated. The skinny old man sitting beside Lin Gang was the sect leader of the deceased demon sect, Old Man Blood Soul. Hearing Lin Gang's words, Old Man Blood Soul laughed hoarsely. His voice was like the cry of a male duck, making people feel uncomfortable. "Sect leader Li, if we take down the sword sect, we will split the resources of the sword sect between us. Moreover, the Blood Blade Valley will occupy Jianzhou. This is a good deal." The Bloodblade Valley, the Deceased Demon Sect, and the Sky Sword Sect were the three first-rate powers. Naturally, they had already discussed how to split the benefits after victory. The Bloodblade Valley wanted the entire Jianzhou, while the Deceased Demon Sect and the Sky Sword Sect would split the Sword Sect equally, including the various treasures and resources of the Sword Sect. The resources of the Sword Sect were enough to make even the Black Emperor Sect envious, let alone the Deceased Demon Sect and the Sky Sword Sect, the two first-rate powers. Originally, Li Ku was a little hesitant. He felt that even if the Bloodblade Valley and the Sky Sword Sect joined forces, they might not be able to defeat the Sword Sect. However, Lin Gang had used some method to convince Old Man Bloodsoul to agree to help. In this way, if the three first-rate powers joined forces, they would be able to fight against a first-rate power like the Black Emperor Sect. It wouldn't be too difficult to defeat the Sword Sect. Hearing Old Man Bloodsoul's words, Li Ku was silent for a moment before he said in a deep voice, "All right, we'll do as we said before. After we defeat the Sword Sect, the Jianzhou will belong to Brother Lin. Senior Bloodsoul and I will split the treasures and resources of the Sword Sect equally." He immediately nodded. Seeing this, Lin Gang's eyes flashed with a trace of a smile. He thought coldly in his heart, even if the Sword Sect had a strong foundation, it would still be destroyed when the three first-rate powers joined forces. The three of them finally agreed to attack the Sword Sect. Seeing this, Li Ku opened his mouth and asked, "When do we do it?" "Let's do it as soon as possible. Let's do it in 2 days. We won't give the Sword Sect any time to prepare and catch them off guard," Lin Gang said coldly when he heard this. They didn't even intend to declare war on Swords Gate. Instead, they went straight to Swords Gate, and before Swords Gate was ready for battle, they would take down Swords Gate at lightning speed. This way they would be able to reduce their losses. Hearing Lin Gang's words, Li Ku and the Blood Demon Old Man nodded in agreement. The three of them discussed for a while before they dispersed and began to prepare for the attack on the Sword Sect. In their opinion, with the three first-rate powers joining forces, they could even fight against the Black Emperor Sect. Taking down the Sword Sect wouldn't be a problem at all. The only problem was how many casualties they would suffer. They were full of confidence, but the three of them clearly didn't expect that the Sword Sect's development over the past decade had far exceeded their expectations. At the same time, the Sword Sect's current strength was far from what it was 10 years ago. Many experts had joined the Sword Sect, and many disciples had improved. All of these had caused the Sword Sect's strength to undergo earth-shattering changes. Therefore, even if the three first-rate forces joined forces, they might not necessarily be a match for the Sword Gate. This was because even Lin Gang and the other two had to admit that even if the three first-rate forces joined forces, they could only contend against the Black Emperor Sect. Compared to the Black Emperor Sect, the current Sword Gate was not much weaker. Moreover, the Sword Sect had a staunch ally, and that was the family Nangong. Therefore, this time, whether the three first-rate powers could take down the Sword Sect was still unknown. However, Lin Gang and the other two didn't realize this at all. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1961. The growth and transformation of the Sword Sect had far exceeded the trio's expectations. After the Blood Demon Old Man and Li Ku left, He Ying quickly entered the main hall. He looked at Lin Gang and asked impatiently, "How is it, Valley Master?" In the Bloodblade Valley, the person who wanted to destroy the Sword Sect the most was not Lin Gang, but He Ying. As a traitor of the Sword Sect, He Ying hated the Sword Sect to the core. Of course, he hated Xiao Qin even more. If not for Xiao Qin, He Ying would not have become a traitor from the Sword Sect's deputy sect master. There was no day and night that did not wish to destroy the Sword's Gate, but unfortunately, as the Sword's Gate grew stronger, the hope in He Ying's heart grew dimmer and dimmer. This time, when Lin Gangle said that the deceased devil sect and the sky sword sect would join forces, He Ying was extremely excited. Seeing He Ying's excited expression, Lin Gang smiled and said, "Don't worry, we've already discussed it. We'll attack the sword sect in a few days." Hearing Lin Gang's words, a smile appeared on He Ying's face. At the same time, a deep hatred flashed across his eyes. Since the sword sect had betrayed him, they could not blame him for being disloyal. Especially Xiao Chen. If he could take down the sword sect this time, He Ying could give up everything, but Xiao Chen had to be personally dealt with by him. When that time came, he would make sure that Xiao Chen begged for death. He Ying's smile grew even colder, as if he could already see Xiao Chen falling into his hands and being tortured to a state worse than death. According to Lin Gang and the other two, attacking the sword sect should be done as soon as possible. They could not allow the sword sect any time to react, nor could they give the sword sect any time to breathe. They had to take down the sword sect in one fell swoop. Because of this, Lin Gang, the blood demon old man, and Li Ku acted very quickly. In just 3 days, the 3 top forces were ready to attack the sword province at the same time. The 3 top powers worked together. Amongst them, there were 4 End Realm experts and 6 Dao Realm experts. As for Comprehension Realm and Celestial Emperor Realm experts, there were many of them. Added together, there were close to 10,000 of them. With so many people moving at the same time, it was also because Tsang Xing's group moved fast enough that Tsang Xing only received the news when the 3 forces had entered the sword sect. He learned that the Bloody Blade Valley, the deceased devil sect, and the sky sword sect had joined forces to attack the sword sect. After hearing this news, Tsang Xing did not dare to delay and immediately told Xiao Chen about it. Within the main hall of the sword sect, Xiao Chen sat on the main seat. Below him were the 8 sword heads, including Tsang Xing, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Lin Qing, and Yang Song. Sweeping his gaze across the crowd, Xiao Chen suddenly revealed a cold smile. The Bloody Blade Valley really does not give up. They even joined forces with the deceased devil sect and the sky sword sect to attack the sword sect. What do you think we should do now? Of course we should fight. Even if the 3 sects join forces, our sword sect has nothing to fear. Hearing this, Tsang Xing was the first to speak. In terms of strength, the sword sect was not weaker than the 3 sections. In terms of Dao Realm experts, the sword sect even had the advantage in numbers. Since they had the upper hand in terms of strength, and the 3 great sects had taken the initiative to attack, there was naturally nothing to say. They would just fight. Previously, they had let the Blood Blade Valley go, but this time, they dared to come knocking on their door. No matter what, they had to completely eliminate this threat. Tsang Xing's attitude was very clear. They wanted to fight. Hearing Tsang Xing's words, Lin Qing, Zhou Song, and Wu Huan all nodded in agreement. I agree with Tsang Xing's opinion. Fight. That's right. The 3 sects are courting death. How can our sword sect be afraid of fighting? Zhou Song and Wu Huan spoke one after another. Lin Qing nodded in agreement. The 4 vice sect masters had unanimously decided to fight. Hearing this, Xiao Chen also nodded and said, Yes, the Bloody Blade Valley is indeed a threat. So this time, I also think it's time to get rid of this potential threat in one fell swoop. After speaking, Xiao Chen paused for a moment before continuing. Now, the Bloody Blade Valley, the Sky Sword Sect, and the Deceased Devil Sect have attacked the Jian province from 3 different directions. Since we have to fight, we can only split up. Lin Qing. With that, Xiao Chen called out in a deep voice. Hearing this, Lin Qing stood up and cupped his hands towards Xiao Chen. Your subordinate is here. Lead people to the east and fight the Sky Sword Sect, Xiao Chen said. Yes. Wu Huan, lead people to the west and fight the Deceased Devil Sect. As for Tsang Xing and Zhou Song, follow me. It's inevitable that we will deal with the Bloody Blade Valley, Xiao Chen instructed. The three sects of the Bloody Blade Valley had attacked the Jian province from 3 different directions at an extremely fast speed. Because of this, Xiao Chen made a prompt decision. Faced with Xiao Chen's arrangement, Song Xing and the other 3 did not have the slightest objection. In the face of the sudden attack from the 3 sects, the sword sect's reaction was not slow at all. On the same day, under the leadership of Xiao Chen, they moved out in full force to meet the 3 sects' attack. They were prepared to fight. The 3 sects did not declare war, and the sword sect's reaction was extremely unyielding. It was obvious that they wanted to fight to the end with the 3 sections. The sword sect was going to fight again, and such a major event naturally attracted a lot of attention in the Great Thousand World. At the same time that the sword sect reacted, the spies of the various sects in the Great Thousand World entered the Jian province one after another. They wanted to be the first to receive the latest news of the battle. No one knew how to put it. In any case, ever since Xiao Chen took over the sword sect, the sword sect did not seem to have any peace. More than 10 years ago, the sword sect had just fought a battle with the Black Emperor sect. This time, they were facing the Bloody Blade Valley, the Sky Sword sect, and the deceased Devil sect at the same time. However, the various sects in the Great Thousand World were very curious as to how strong the sword sect had become in the past 10 years. This time, Xiao Chen did not ask for help from the family Nangong. Firstly, with the sword sect's current strength, they were not afraid of being besieged by the 3 sections. Secondly, the Bloody Blade Valley did not declare war at all. Instead, they suddenly attacked, and it was too late to ask for help from the family Nangong. With Song Xing, Zhou Song, and a group of experts from the sword sect, Xiao Chen headed south and soon met the Bloody Blade Valley. In the southern part of the Jian province, in a valley called the Green Pine Valley, the experts from the sword sect and the Bloody Blade Valley met. When he saw Lin Gang and He Ying, who was beside Lin Gang, Xiao Chen immediately sneered. He Ying, I previously guessed that a traitor like you had defected to the Bloody Blade Valley. Now, it seems that I was right. He Ying had defected from the sword sect and defected to the Bloody Blade Valley. Hearing this, Song Xing, who was beside Xiao Chen, shouted in a deep voice. He Ying, you traitor! Why don't you kneel down and admit your guilt? Perhaps the sect leader will spare your worthless life. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1962. Song Xing naturally didn't have a good impression of He Ying. Back in the sword sect, He Ying had been coveting the position of sect master as the vice sect master. If not for Song Xing restraining him, He Ying would have long proclaimed himself as the sect master of the sword sect. In Song Xing's mind, the sect master of the sword sect was either the heaven-breaking sword master or the chosen successor of the heaven-breaking sword master. Other than that, no one else had the qualifications. The two of them had been fighting openly and secretly when they were in the sword sect. Now that He Ying had betrayed the sword sect and joined the Blood Blade Valley, Song Xing's heart was naturally overflowing with killing intent. In his opinion, He Ying was a traitor. Faced with Song Xing's angry scolding, He Ying's eyes flashed with extreme coldness. He looked at Song Xing and said coldly, Song Xing, I really don't understand. How can a child like him be the sect master? What a joke. He Ying had never acknowledged Xiao Chen's identity as the sect master, but it didn't matter because Xiao Chen no longer needed his acknowledgement. Moreover, the sword sect was much stronger than it had been when He Ying was still around. Xiao Chen didn't care about He Ying at all. Song Xing and He Ying looked at each other with killing intent. At the same time, Lin Gang spoke to Xiao Chen indifferently. Xiao Chen, with your ability, it's impossible for the sword sect to rise again. Why don't you join my Bloodblade Valley? I can spare your life. Lin Gang actually wanted Xiao Chen to join the Bloodblade Valley. Hearing this, Xiao Chen immediately sneered. Lin Gang, you think too highly of yourself. What qualifications does your Bloodblade Valley have to make my sword sect join? This time, your 3 great sects have joined forces to besiege the sword sect. Very good. I also want to use this opportunity to eliminate your Bloodblade Valley once and for all. This way, I can remove a threat. The sword sect was definitely more powerful than the Bloodknife Valley. Lin Gang actually asked Xiao Chen to lead the sword sect to join the Bloodknife Valley. Wasn't that a joke? Xiao Chen rejected him without any hesitation. Hearing this, a cold glint flashed across Lin Gang's face as he said, "All right, in that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. This time, I will definitely destroy your sword sect in one fell swoop. Kill." With the 3 sects working together, Lin Gang was confident that they could destroy the sword sect. However, upon hearing Lin Gang's words, Xiao Chen laughed inwardly. Did they think that the 3 major sects would be able to deal with the sword sect if they joined hands? This time, it was still unknown who would be the one to destroy who. As soon as Lin Gang finished speaking, the people from the Bloodknife Valley began to move. At the same time, Xiao Chen also shouted in a low voice, "Kill!" Upon hearing Xiao Chen's order, the people from the sword sect also charged towards the Bloodknife Valley without hesitation. For a moment, the experts from the 2 great sects were engaged in an extremely fierce battle. In terms of strength, the Bloodknife Valley was indeed much weaker than the sword sect. Even though the sword sect had split into 3 groups, they were still not at a disadvantage. In terms of the number of experts, the sword sect still had the advantage. However, Lin Gang did not know the true strength of the sword sect. At this moment, he was still fighting with Zhou Song and had a smug expression on his face as he spoke. "Do you think that you can stop my Bloodblade Valley? There's still the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect. Your sword sect has arranged so many experts here. Let's see what you have to stop the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect." Lin Gang thought that Xiao Chen had used most of the strength of the sword sect to stop the Bloodknife Valley. In this way, the pressure on the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect would be greatly reduced. When the time came, the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect would defeat the sword sect, and the pressure on the Bloodknife Valley would naturally disappear. It was a good idea. However, Lin Gang clearly did not expect that Xiao Chen did not use all of the strength of the sword sect to deal with the Bloodknife Valley. Instead, Xiao Chen had also arranged for people to deal with the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect. For Lin Gang to have such thoughts, it could only be said that his understanding of the sword sect was still too shallow. It was still 10 years ago. Little did he know that the sword sect was already on a completely different level than it was in the past 10 years. Hearing Lin Gang's words, Zhou Song did not even bother replying to him. Instead, he attacked even more fiercely. Xiao Chen only had one order for Lin Gang and He Ying, and that was to kill them. Therefore, Zhou Song did not give Lin Gang any chance at all. He attacked with all his strength. At the same time that Xiao Chen had started fighting with the Bloodknife Valley, on the other side, Wu Huan and Lin Qing led the experts of the sword sect to fight with the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect. Unlike Lin Gang, Xiao Chen did not use all of the strength of the sword sect to deal with the Bloodknife Valley. Similarly, Xiao Chen did not let down his guard against the deceased demon sect and the sky sword sect. At this moment, Wu Huan was fighting with the blood demon old man, the leader of the deceased demon sect. At the same time, it was obvious that the sword sect had the upper hand in the battle below. He did not expect that the sword sect would counterattack so fiercely. However, the blood demon old man had the same idea as Lin Gang. The more pressure he was under, the less pressure the Bloodknife Valley and the sky sword sect would be under. When the time came, the 2 sects would be able to directly attack the sword sect's base. As long as the sword sect's base was destroyed, the blood demon old man's threat would naturally be eliminated. His thoughts were exactly the same as Lin Gang's. However, what the blood demon old man didn't expect was that while he was under a lot of pressure, the Bloodblade Valley and the Sky Sword sect were also under a lot of pressure. Needless to say, even the Sky Sword sect was locked in a fierce battle against the Sword sect experts led by Lin Qing. Li Ke's face darkened as he fought with Lin Qing. You are Lin Qing? Have you joined the Sword's Gate?" he asked in surprise. Previously, Li Ke, Lin Gang, and the blood demon old man had investigated the strength of the Sword sect. However, at that time there were only 3 End Realm experts in the Sword sect. They were Tsang Xing, Zhou Song, and Wu Huan. But now, Lin Qing had suddenly appeared. This clearly messed up the plans of the 3 of them. Facing Li Ke's shock, Lin Qing said with a cold smile, "Do you think that the 3 of you working together can deal with the Sword sect? Let me tell you the truth. In these 10 years, the strength of the Sword sect has far exceeded your imagination. Are you thinking that since you are under such great pressure, the pressure on the Blood Knife Valley and the deceased demon sect should be much less? What a joke. Let me tell you, the pressure on the deceased demon sect and the Blood Knife Valley is no less than yours." As he spoke, Lin Qing slashed out with his sword. Due to the previous shock, Li Ke was stunned for a moment and was forced back by Lin Qing's sword. He stabilized his body, and a complicated expression flashed across his eyes. He had miscalculated. He had really miscalculated. He thought that with the 3 sects working together, they would be able to deal with the Sword sect. Who would have thought that the Sword sect's strength would be so much stronger than 10 years ago? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1963. As he was distracted, he was forced back by Lin Qing's sword. Actually, Li Ke and Lin Qing knew each other before. After all, they were both sword cultivators and were both at End Realm. Their strengths were on the same level. So in the past, Lin Qing and Li Ke had come into contact several times, although they weren't close. Because they knew each other, Li Ke was so surprised when he saw Lin Qing. He really didn't expect Lin Qing to join the Sword sect. No, it should be said that Lin Qing returned to the Sword sect. After all, Lin Qing was an elder of the Sword sect. After forcing Li Ke back with one sword, Lin Qing didn't continue to attack. He had other thoughts in his heart. Bloodblade Valley, Deceased Demon Sect, and Sky Sword Sect. Among these 3 sects, the weakest was undoubtedly the Sky Sword Sect. Moreover, the Sky Sword Sect had some ties with the Sword Sect. When the Sword Sect was at its peak, the Sky Sword Sect was actually a subsidiary sect of the Sword Sect. At that time, the previous sect leader of the Sky Sword Sect, who was Li Ke's master, wanted to bring the Sky Sword Sect into the Sword Sect and become a true member of the Sword Sect. Unfortunately, the Sword Sect didn't care about the Sky Sword Sect at that time, so they rejected Li Ke's master. Actually, there was nothing strange about this. After all, when the Sword Sect was at its peak, the 2 words Sword Sect represented all the sword cultivators in the world. Any sword cultivator in that era would feel proud to be able to join the Sword Sect. Since the Sky Sword Sect and the Sword Sect had such a relationship, and everyone in the Sky Sword Sect were sword cultivators, wouldn't the strength of the Sword Sect increase tremendously if they could pull the Sky Sword Sect over? Lin Qing had his reasons for wanting to recruit Li Ke. First of all, no matter how much the Sword's Gate had declined, it was still once glorious. Some things that were deeply ingrained in their bones were not something that could be easily changed. For example, the longing that sword cultivators had for the Sword Sect still existed to this day. Some sword cultivators still wanted to join the Sword Sect. It was precisely because the Sword Sect had such a glorious past that the entire Sky Sword Sect did not reject the Sword Sect from the bottom of their hearts. Frankly speaking, the reason why Li Ke had joined forces with the Bloody Blade Valley and the Deceased Demon Sect to attack the Sword Sect was because he wanted to obtain the foundation of the Sword Sect. After all, that was something that all sword cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. He was tempted by benefits, but from another perspective, he was immediately tempted by benefit. This proved that there was something in the sword sect that attracted him. In this case, Lin Qing could also use this method to rope in Li Ku. He already had a plan in mind. At the same time, Li Ku attacked with his sword. Seeing this, Lin Qing raised his sword to block. Li Ku, this time, you led the Sky Sword Sect to attack the Sword Sect because of the foundation of the Sword Sect, right? After all, to sword cultivators, the Sword Sect was like a holy land. Hearing Lin Qing's words, Li Ku did not understand what he meant. He frowned, but he did not retort. So what if it is? Li Ku agreed to join forces with Lin Gang and the Blood Demon Ancestor because of the foundation of the Sword Sect. Hearing this, a smile flashed across Lin Qing's eyes. The Bloody Blade Valley should be in Wuzhou now, right? Li Ku, what do you think of the Sky Sword Sect's strength compared to the Bloody Blade Valley? Lin Qing asked. However, he did not immediately answer this question. It was not that he did not know the answer, but that he did not want to answer. Compared to the Bloody Blade Valley, the Sky Sword Sect was naturally weaker. Not to mention other things, just in terms of End Realm experts, the Bloody Blade Valley was stronger than the Sky Sword Sect. After all, in the entire Sky Sword Sect, Li Ku was the only End Realm expert. On the other hand, the Bloody Blade Valley had He Ying and Lin Gang. Seeing that Li Ku's face sunk, but he did not answer, Lin Qing did not mind and continued to speak slowly. It seems like you know the answer. Let me ask you, if the attack on the Sword Sect fails, what will happen after the Sky Sword Sect and the Bloody Blade Valley return to Wuzhou? Lin Qing continued to ask. Facing this question, Li Ku did not answer, and Lin Qing continued to speak without caring. Let me tell you, if the attack on the Sword Sect fails, the Bloody Blade Valley's next target will be your Sky Sword Sect. At that time, the Bloody Blade Valley will want to dominate Wuzhou and destroy your Sky Sword Sect. A mountain could not accommodate two tigers. This was a very normal thing. Just like the Sword School and the Blood Saber Valley from before. Because they were both in the Jian province, the two sects could be said to be in a situation where only one side would rest. After all, no one wanted another to sleep soundly beside their bed. A cold glint flashed across Li Ku's eyes when he heard Lin Qing's words. However, he quickly hid it. After which, he said in an indifferent voice, Lin Qing, there is no need to use such a childish tactic to sow discord. Li Ku thought that Lin Qing was trying to sow discord. Hearing this, Lin Qing laughed out loud. Haha, sow discord? I'm not that bored. Moreover, with the strength of my sword sect, why would I need to sow discord? This time, even if the three sects work together, if we fight to the death, the winner will be my sword sect. There is no doubt about that. After hearing that he was trying to sow discord, Lin Qing laughed loudly. His words were full of arrogance, as if the sword sect did not put the three sects in their eyes. Facing Lin Qing's laughter, although Li Ku's face sank, he did not refute because this was the truth. They had underestimated the strength of the sword sect. Seeing that Li Ku did not refute his words, Lin Qing quickly stopped laughing and took the initiative to retreat. Not knowing what Lin Qing was trying to do, Li Ku also stopped what he was doing. The two of them looked at each other. At this moment, Li Ku finally realized that Lin Qing probably had other intentions. He immediately asked in a deep voice, Lin Qing, what exactly do you mean? Nothing. I just wanted to say that you should think about the Sky Sword Sect. You. Hearing Lin Qing's words, Li Ku was taken aback. Then, he shouted angrily. However, Lin Qing did not give Li Ku a chance to speak. As soon as Li Ku opened his mouth, Lin Qing spoke first. Li Ku, come to my sword sect and lead the people of the Sky Sword Sect to join the Sword Sect. This is your best and wisest choice. Otherwise, it won't be long before the Sky Sword Sect is annihilated. After saying so much, Lin Qing finally expressed his thoughts and extended an olive branch to Li Ku, inviting him to join the Sword Sect and lead the entire Sky Sword Sect to join the Sword Sect and become a part of the Sword Sect. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1964. Li Ku, come to my sword gate. Hearing Lin Qing's words, he was stunned for a moment before he shouted coldly. Lin Qing, are you joking? My Sky Sword Sect is attacking the Sword Sect right now, and you want to rope me in? The Sky Sword Sect and the Sword Sect were enemies, but Lin Qing was trying to rope in Li Ku and the entire Sky Sword Sect. Wasn't this a joke? Lin Qing didn't seem to mind Li Ku's words at all. Do you think I'm joking? As for the enemy you speak of, to be honest, the Sky Sword Sect isn't strong enough to become the Sword Sect's enemy. Lin Qing's words were very arrogant, and Li Ku's eyes flashed with anger. After all, he was the sect master of the Sky Sword Sect. It would be strange if he wasn't angry when someone spoke to him in such a manner. However, Lin Qing acted as if he didn't see the anger on Li Ku's face. He continued to speak with a smile. Think about it yourself. If we fail to attack the Sword Gate this time, what will your Sky Sword Sect face? Moreover, although our Sword Gate has declined now, in a short 10 years, our Sword Gate's improvement is obvious to all. I believe you have a deep understanding of this. Moreover, the current sect master of the Sword Sect is the successor of the Skysplitter Sword Sovereign. Although he is young, his talent is outstanding. In a short 10 years, he has broken through to the realm of enlightenment. Can't such a person help the Sword Sect rise again? Finally, although our Sword Sect's strength is far from its peak, we have preserved most of our foundation. With this foundation and a new sect master, do you think the Sword Sect can't rise again? Li Ku, think about it carefully. Is it better to be the sect leader of the Heavenly Sword Sect or the vice-sect leader of the Sword Sect? With your cultivation, if you join the Sword Sect, I, Lin Qing, can guarantee with my life that you will definitely become the vice-sect leader of the Sword Sect. When the Sword Sect rises, your status will be unimaginable. Moreover, isn't joining the Sword Sect your master's wish? Li Ku fell silent when he heard that. Lin Qing's words did make sense. If they failed to attack the Sword Sect this time, the Sky Sword Sect would definitely fight with the Bloodblade Valley. Regardless of whether they won or lost, it was not something the Sky Sword Sect wanted to see. Moreover, with the strength of the Sky Sword Sect, it was indeed too difficult to defeat the Bloodblade Valley. There was almost no chance. Moreover, Lin Qing also said that if Li could join the Sword Sect, he could definitely become the vice-sect leader of the Sword Sect. Although it was only a vice-sect leader, in terms of power and status, the vice-sect leader of the Sword Sect was obviously much more powerful than the sect leader of the Sky Sword Sect. Lastly, and also what Li Ku valued the most, was Lin Qing's last sentence. It had always been his master's wish to merge the Sky Sword Sect into the Sword Sect. It was not an exaggeration to say that Li Ku's master was definitely the most loyal supporter of the Sword Sect. In the eyes of Li Ku's master, the true top sword cultivators in the Great Thousand World should all join the Sword Sect. The two words, Sword Sect, were a type of belief in Li Ku's master. After falling silent for a while, Li Ku looked at Lin Qing and slowly said, "Will Sect Master Xiaoqin accept my Sky Sword Sect joining the Sword Sect?" Hearing Li Ku's words, Lin Qing immediately laughed out loud. The fact that Li Ku asked this question meant that Li Ku was moved. Lin Qing immediately smiled and said, "Haha, I've already said it. The Sky Sword Sect doesn't have the qualifications to be the Sword Sect's enemy. Therefore, you don't have to worry about this at all. I can guarantee it with my life." The Sword Sect needed to develop quickly. Moreover, with Xiao Chen's temper, Lin Qing was sure that if Li Ku agreed to join the Sword Sect, Xiao Chen would definitely not reject it. As for whether Li Ku would be loyal after joining the Sword Sect, there was no need to worry about this at all. Because even if Li Ku had other thoughts, could the other 4 vice-sect leaders, Song Xing, Lin Qing, Zhou Song, and Wu Huan, be just for show? 4 of them couldn't take down Li Ku? It could be said that if Li Ku joined the Sword Sect, it would only benefit the Sword Sect. This was why Lin Qing spent so much effort to recruit Li Ku. Xiao Chen did not know what had happened between Lin Qing and Li Ku. At the place where he was, the experts of the Sword School were already engaged in a fierce battle with the people of the Blood Blade Valley. Song Xing was fighting He Ying, while Zhou Song was fighting Lin Gang. However, between End Realm experts, it was hard to determine a victor in a one-on-one situation. Therefore, even if Xiao Chen really wanted to kill Lin Gang and He Ying, it would be very difficult for him to do so. After all, the difference in strength between the 4 of them wasn't that big. It was too difficult to kill them in a one-on-one situation. After all, End Realm experts were especially easy to kill. However, Xiao Chen couldn't interfere in an End Realm level battle. Not to mention End Realm experts, Xiao Chen didn't even have the ability to interfere in a Dao Realm level battle. Although he had already broken through to the Comprehension Realm, Xiao Chen was very clear that there was still a huge gap between him and true experts like Song Xing. Therefore, Xiao Chen didn't take the initiative to search for the Bloodblade Valley experts. Instead, he fought with an elder who was at the small completion realm of comprehension. Xiao Chen had just broken through to the comprehension realm and was only at the initial stage of the comprehension realm. However, facing this elder, Xiao Chen wasn't at a disadvantage. Xiao Chen was unable to fight someone who was of a higher realm than him. However, if they were of the same realm and there was a difference of a few levels between them, Xiao Chen would be able to fight him with his unparalleled combat prowess. At this moment, there were many blood-colored swords surrounding Xiao Chen. Sharp and powerful sword energy spread out. Seeing Xiao Chen surrounded by so many blood-colored swords, the Blood Blade Valley Elder said with a gloomy expression, "Sword body, you actually have a sword body." With one look, he could tell that Xiao Chen had a sword body. Such a body type was one of the top in the Great Thousand World. Moreover, the sword body was the body type that all sword cultivators dreamed of. He seemed to understand why Xiao Chen would become the successor of the heaven-breaking sword Venerable. So that was the case. The sword body did indeed have such qualifications. Hearing the elder's words, Xiao Chen's expression was calm. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he said flatly, "It's a little too early to be surprised now." With that, Xiao Chen's mind moved, and countless blood-colored swords flew towards the Bloodblade Valley Elder. After cultivating with Junwuya for 20 years, Xiao Chen had basically grasped how to use the sword body. Now, when he used the sword body, its power was much stronger than when he was in Hachibra Senkai. Seeing the countless blood-colored swords flying towards him, a fierce look flashed across the Bloodblade Valley Elder's eyes. He then slashed out with his blade and shouted coldly, "Although the sword body is strong, your cultivation is too low. What can you do? Break for me. Begging for your collection, begging for your monthly votes, begging for your recommendation." Chapter 1965. Although the elder of the Bloodblade Valley was shocked by Xiao Chen's sword body, he did not allow himself to be captured. Just as he had said, Xiao Chen's cultivation was only at the entry level of the realm of enlightenment before the sword body was displayed. He swung his blade in an attempt to shatter Xiao Chen's sword images. However, although the elder's attack struck the sword images, it did not shatter them all. The sword physique was indeed extraordinary. In particular, Xiao Chen's grasp over the sword realm was much greater than before. As a result, even though there was a difference in cultivation, it was still very difficult for the elder to gain any advantage over Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen did not lose the upper hand in the clash. The remaining blood-red swords continued to fly towards the elder. To be able to become an elder of the Bloodblade Valley with such strength, it looks like I've overestimated your Bloodblade Valley, Xiao Chen said indifferently as he looked at the elder. A cold light flashed through the elder's eyes when he heard Xiao Chen's words. His face sank as he said, "What arrogance! Shatter!" Being looked down upon by a member of the younger generation, the elder's heart was naturally filled with rage. Immediately after, he slashed out with his blade once again. Finally, he completely shattered the sword shadows that filled the sky before him. However, although the elder had blocked Xiao Chen's attack, it was only a single strike. At that moment, the surroundings of Xiao Chen and the elder were enveloped by the sword realm. Blood-red swords continuously condensed. As mentioned earlier, although the elder had blocked Xiao Chen's attack, it was only a single strike. He was unable to break through Xiao Chen's sword realm. In other words, it was impossible for him to do so with his strength. After breaking through to the comprehension realm, Xiao Chen's strength was much stronger than when he was in the immortal emperor realm. Thus, Xiao Chen was not afraid of the elder at all. Once again enveloped by the sword realm, a solemn look flashed across the elder's eyes. Although on the surface, the elder did not seem to be afraid of Xiao Chen's sword realm at all, in his heart, he was indeed very wary of Xiao Chen's sword realm. The sword physique was recognized as one of the strongest physiques in the Great Thousand World. There was no need to doubt this at all. Xiao Chen possessed the sword physique, so his strength naturally made the elder fearful. Xiao Chen did not waste any more words with the elder. He immediately swung his sword and took the initiative to attack the elder. With the support of the sword realm, the power of Xiao Chen's attack was greatly increased. Xiao Chen and the elder, Zhou Song and Lin Gang, Song Xing and He Ying. Everyone was standing together in a pool of blood. For a moment it was difficult to tell who was the winner. Lin Gang didn't have any advantage in the fight with Zhou Song, but neither did Zhou Song. However, Zhou Song didn't give Lin Gang any time to catch his breath. He had been suppressing Lin Gang all the time. Lin Gang had to be careful in the face of Zhou Song's ferocious attack. At this moment, Lin Gang sneered as he fought with Zhou Song. "Zhou Song, you and I are equal in strength. It's impossible for you to kill me. Now that the Sword Sect and my Bloodblade Valley are fighting fiercely, what about the other two sides? Have you thought about it?" Lin Gang still felt that the Sword Sect had placed most of their strength on the Bloodblade Valley. In this way, the Sky Sword Sect and the Deceased Demon Sect would be under less pressure. Lin Gang even felt that the Sky Sword Sect and the Deceased Demon Sect might have already reached the foot of the Sword Sect. He thought that the Deceased Demon Sect and the Sky Sword Sect had already broken through the Sword Sect's defensive line. Unfortunately, he was too naive. Just as Lin Gang finished speaking, a voice full of ridicule rang out. "Lin Gang, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed." "Who?" Lin Gang was stunned when he heard this voice. He immediately asked in a deep voice. Following Lin Gang's shout, Lin Qing and Li Ku's figures slowly appeared on the horizon. When he saw Li Ku, Lin Gang was confused at first. However, he was soon overjoyed. "Li Ku? Haha, it seems that you've already taken care of the Sword Sect." Lin Gang did not know Lin Qing. When he saw Li Ku appear, Lin Gang naturally thought that Li Ku had come to help him. However, when he heard Lin Gang's words, Lin Qing, who was standing beside Li Ku, laughed disdainfully. "You're so silly that you're cute." Lin Qing did not hide his disdain for Lin Gang. When he finished speaking, Lin Qing turned to look at Li Ku and said, "Brother Li, this is your chance to show off. Join the Sword Sect and prove your allegiance." "Brother Lin, don't worry. I know what to do." Li Ku smiled faintly when he heard Lin Qing's words. Lin Gang thought that Li Ku had come to help him, but he did not know that this was not the case. Li Ku had come here because he had already decided to join the Sword Sect. Lin Qing had tried to rope him in before, so Li Ku had finally made his choice. Compared to the Heavenly Sword Sect, just as Lin Qing had said, joining the Sword's Gate was the best choice. Furthermore, the position of the vice-sect master of the Sword's Gate was definitely not inferior to that of the sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect. In fact, the vice-sect master might even be stronger. Humans strive for greater heights. Moreover, it was Li Ku's master's wish to merge the Sky Sword sect into the Sword sect. As such, Li Ku naturally had no reason to refuse. When he heard Li Ku's words, Lin Qing smiled faintly. Lin Gang, who was fighting fiercely with Zhou Song, frowned slightly. He also felt that something was wrong. This Li Ku did not seem to be here to help him. Then what was he doing here? Moreover, who was the person beside him? Just as Lin Gang was feeling puzzled, Lin Qing laughed coldly and said, "Make your move." The moment he said that, an end-realm aura exploded from Lin Qing's body. Feeling this aura, Lin Gang's expression changed and he couldn't help but exclaim, "End-realm cultivation." He didn't expect Lin Qing to be an end-realm expert. However, it was already too late for him to be surprised because Lin Qing had already charged towards He Ying. Lin Gang didn't recognize Lin Qing, but He Ying did. After all, Lin Qing and He Ying could be said to be senior and junior brothers. However, after Lin Qing left the Sword sect, He Ying became the vice-sect leader of the Sword sect. Seeing Lin Qing appear, He Ying's face flashed with shock. "Lin Qing, you, that's right, I'm back in the Sword sect. He Ying, I said before that you're a naturally rebellious person. Now, it seems like I was right." Facing He Ying, Lin Qing sneered coldly. Then, he joined forces with Song Xing to attack He Ying. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1966. Lin Qing sneered as he looked at He Ying. Hearing this, the chill in He Ying's eyes intensified. At the same time, a thought of retreating emerged in his heart. He had no choice. If he was facing Song Xing alone, he would not be afraid at all. This was because Song Xing alone could not do anything to him. Although he could not do anything to Song Xing either, at least his life was not in danger. However, if Lin Qing joined in and the two of them attacked him together, then the situation would be completely different. Lin Qing and Song Xing, the two of them together, were completely capable of killing him. Lin Qing was no stranger to He Ying. Keenly sensing the change in He Ying's expression, Lin Qing did not say anything and directly blocked off He Ying's escape route. Then, he joined forces with Song Xing to attack He Ying. With a thick sneer on his face, Lin Qing said indifferently, "He Ying, I know your human form too well. You want to run, right? But I'm afraid you won't have the chance today." Lin Qing could tell at a glance that He Ying was thinking of retreating. Naturally, he would not give He Ying the chance to escape. Hence, without saying anything, he blocked off He Ying's escape route. When he saw Lin Qing's actions, the chill in He Ying's eyes intensified. Lin Qing clearly wanted to kill him right here and now. With the addition of Lin Qing, the pressure on He Ying naturally increased by a lot. Although He Ying could still hold on for the time being, it was obvious that He Ying would not be able to hold on for much longer if the situation continued on like this. Just like He Ying, after Lin Qing made his move, Li Ku also immediately attacked Lin Gang. Without any explanation, he joined forces with Zhou Song to deal with Lin Gang. Although Zhou Song did not know about the relationship between Li Ku and Lin Qing, he naturally would not reject Li Ku's offer to help. After all, it was indeed difficult for Zhou Song to take down Lin Gang alone. Now that Li Ku was helping him, Zhou Song saw hope in killing Lin Gang. Zhou Song's confidence was boosted, but Lin Gang was completely different. While facing the combined attacks of Zhou Song and Li Ku, he glared at Li Ku and shouted, "Li Ku, what are you doing? Are you crazy?" Li Ku was supposed to be his ally, but now he was helping Zhou Song to deal with him. This made Lin Gang extremely depressed. In response to Lin Gang's angry shout, Li Ku was extremely calm. "Lin Gang, I have decided to join the Sword sect. If you know what's good for you, you'd better surrender now." Sect's leader, perhaps the sect leader will spare your life. Li Ku, and chose to join the sword sect? Upon hearing these words, Lin Gang was taken aback. However, he quickly became enraged as he shouted, "You traitor!" Lin Gang didn't expect that Li Ku would change sides at the last minute. If that was the case, wouldn't their plan to attack the sword gate fail? Not to mention the possibility of failure, it was already extremely difficult for Lin Gang to escape, because Zhou Song and Li Ku were both entangled with him, giving him no chance to escape. Hearing that Li Ku had joined the sword sect, Zhou Song's lips curled into a smile. He vaguely guessed that this was Lin Qing's doing. Not bad, not bad. The sword sect now has another End Realm expert. He did not doubt Li Ku's words. Li Ku and Lin Gang were clearly not holding back at all. Li Ku really wanted to kill Lin Gang. Just like Lin Qing said, this was Li Ku's proof of joining the sword sect. With Li Ku's help, Zhou Song's confidence was greatly boosted. He thought that no matter what, he had to kill Lin Gang here today. Thinking of this, Zhou Song's attacks became even more ferocious. With the addition of Li Ku and Lin Qing, the situation was completely reversed. Originally, He Ying and Lin Gang were evenly matched against Song Xing and Zhou Song. But now, with the arrival of Lin Qing and Li Ku, the balance was completely broken. Lin Gang and He Ying were not afraid of one-on-one. But one against two, the situation was completely different. Moreover, Lin Qing and Li Ku's strength was not weaker than Lin Gang and He Ying's. All of a sudden, the situation was completely reversed. Lin Gang and He Ying were completely suppressed. As a result, the morale of the Swords Gate's side naturally rose. As for the Bloodblade Valley side, their morale was clearly much weaker. There was nothing they could do. Looking at Lin Gang and He Ying, they were completely suppressed and could only bitterly hold on. Even their own sect leader was in such a state. How could the people below have any fighting spirit? Xiao Qian was still engaged in a fierce battle with the elder of the Bloodblade Valley. However, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Lin Qing and Li Ku's appearance made Xiao Qian unconsciously happy. It seemed that he would definitely win today. Moreover, Lin Gang and He Ying also had a very high chance of killing the two of them. Of course, what made Xiao Qian the happiest wasn't this. Xiao Qian had heard the conversation between Lin Qing and Li Ku. It was obvious that Li Ku had chosen to join the sword sect. What made Xiao Qian happy was that Li Ku had joined. He was an End Realm expert. With him joining the sword sect, there was no doubt that the strength of the sword sect would increase by a lot. As a result, the sword sect had 5 End Realm experts. Even compared to the Black Emperor sect, they weren't any weaker. After all, the Black Emperor sect also only had 5 End Realm experts. Moreover, the Sword sect had 8 Dao Realm experts, which were sword heads. They had even more than the Black Emperor sect. They completely had the ability to charge into the top powers. This was naturally what Xiao Qian was happy about. Of course, Xiao Qian didn't know that Li Ku joining the Sword sect wasn't just a small benefit. Apart from Li Ku himself being an End Realm expert, the entire Sky Sword sect also joined the Sword sect. Even Wuzhou, which was controlled by the Sky Sword sect, would belong to the Sword sect from today onwards. With Wuzhou, the Sword sect would be able to dominate two states. With that, they would be able to obtain more resources. The more resources they had, the better it would be for the development of a sect. There was no doubt about that. One could say that Lin Qing being able to persuade Li Ku to join the Sword sect was a huge contribution. It played a huge role in the growth of the Sword sect's strength. Xiao Qian was delighted. However, the elder who was fighting against Xiao Qian had an ashen face. It was like he could already see the destruction of Bloodblade Valley. After all, Lin Gang and He Ying were surrounded. Looking at the current situation, it was only a matter of time before they lost. Once Lin Qing, Zhou Song, Song Xing, and Li Ku were free, it would be a disaster for the people of Bloodblade Valley. Who would be able to block 4 End Realm experts? begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1967. Lin Gang and He Ying were currently facing the combined attacks of Tsang Xing, Zhou Song, Lin Qing, and Li Ku, four End Realm experts. If this continued, Lin Gang and He Ying's defeat was almost certain. 2 against 1, this advantage was already incomparably huge. The battle continued, and Xiao Qin relied on the power of the Sword Realm to gradually suppress the Blood Blade Valley Elder in front of him. Being suppressed by Xiao Qin, although the Elder tried his best to resist, he was still unable to change anything. He tried his best to resist Xiao Qin's attacks, but Xiao Qin's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. The Elder's injuries were getting worse and worse, and it seemed like he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Such a battle naturally wouldn't end in a short period of time. Thus, for an entire day and night, the Sword Province could feel the aftermath of the battle between the Sword Sect and the Blood Blade Valley, as well as the Demon Slaying Sect. After fighting intensely for an entire day and night, Xiao Qin relied on the position of the Sword Realm to finally kill this Blood Blade Valley Elder. In a one-on-one battle, and in a situation where his cultivation was lower, Xiao Qin was able to kill a Comprehension Realm expert. This was indeed not easy. At the same time, it also displayed Xiao Qin's heaven-defying combat strength against those of the same realm. From the overall situation, Xiao Qin killing an Elder of the Blood Blade Valley didn't have much of an effect. However, Xiao Qin was able to kill a Comprehension Realm expert, which indeed made Xiao Qin very happy. This was because this was the first time Xiao Qin had killed a Comprehension Realm expert. However, after killing this Blood Blade Valley Elder, Xiao Qin had expended a lot of energy and didn't choose to continue attacking. In fact, at this point in the battle, it wasn't important whether Xiao Qin attacked or not. The outcome of the battle was basically determined. Other than Lin Gang and He Ying, who were still stubbornly resisting, the other experts of the Bloodblade Valley were either dead or injured. They were completely suppressed by the Sword Sect. The experts of the Sword Sect led by Yang Song and the others had completely suppressed the Bloodblade Valley. At the same time, the Vice Valley Master of the Bloodblade Valley, a Dao Realm expert, had also been killed by Yang Song. As the experts of the Bloodblade Valley fell one after another, the outcome was set. Only Lin Gang and He Ying were left. However, even for Lin Gang and He Ying, after a day and night of intense battle, they were also facing the combined attacks of 4 End Realm experts. Their situation was already extremely bad. With such a situation, even as an End Realm expert with thick life energy, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. It was obviously impossible to kill an End Realm expert in one strike. One could only slowly wear them down and use up their life energy. Only then would one have a chance to kill an End Realm expert. Lin Gang and He Ying were in such a situation. The life energy in their bodies was constantly being used up. Once their life energy was used up, their outcome was obvious. They could also feel that the two of them were reaching their limit. As such, Song Xing, Zhou Song, Lin Qing, and Li Ku didn't waste this opportunity. Their attacks became more and more ferocious. They couldn't hold on and couldn't find a way to escape. Last time, He Ying was able to escape from the Sword Sect because he had a space compass on him. Unfortunately, that space compass had been used up. He Ying didn't have a second space compass on him. Without a space compass, it was almost impossible to escape from Song Xing's hands. Furthermore, Song Xing had already suffered once. How could he give He Ying such a chance again? As such, Song Xing had been blocking He Ying's path of retreat, not giving He Ying any chance to escape. This made He Ying extremely angry. While blocking Song Xing and Lin Qing's attacks, He Ying shouted coldly, "Song Xing, are you really going to be so ruthless? No matter what, you and I were comrades in the past. Do you really have to kill me?" Comrades? He Ying, you are just a traitor of the Sword Sect. What comrades? Today you will die. Facing He Ying's angry shout, Song Xing didn't care at all. In the past, Song Xing did not think that he and He Ying had any feelings for each other. Not to mention that He Ying had already betrayed the Sword Sect. Even in the past, when the two of them were still vice-sect leaders of the Sword Sect, Song Xing and He Ying could be described as fire and water. At that time, He Ying was bent on becoming the sect leader of the Sword Sect. Song Xing felt that the position of sect leader of the Sword Sect could only be taken by the successor of the heaven-breaking Sword Sage. Therefore, the two of them were fighting openly and secretly. Neither of them was willing to back down. Their relationship had never been harmonious. Therefore, it was impossible for He Ying to use their friendship to move Song Xing, seeing that Song Xing had no intention of holding back, and the murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger as time passed. He Ying gritted his teeth. His heart was filled with unwillingness, but his body was almost at its limit. He Ying felt powerless. Not giving He Ying any time to catch his breath, Song Xing and Lin Qing tightly entangled He Ying, each wave of attacks stronger than the last. Just as He Ying found it increasingly difficult to defend against Song Xing and Lin Qing's attacks, on the other side, Lin Gang suddenly let out a scream. Zhou Song's fist landed on Lin Gang's chest. A terrifying wave of spiritual energy instantly exploded and entered Lin Gang's body, breaking his heart. Just like He Ying, Lin Gang had also reached his limit. Zhou Song accurately took advantage of Lin Gang's momentary lapse in concentration and immediately lashed out with a punch, before he viciously punched Lin Gang's chest. If it were anyone else, they would have died on the spot. However, Lin Gang was an end-realm expert after all. After his heart was broken, he didn't die on the spot. However, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Then, his aura instantly weakened. His face was pale and his aura was weak. Lin Gang looked at Zhou Song in front of him. A deep sense of unwillingness flashed across his eyes. He didn't expect that he would die here. Just a day ago, Lin Gang was still full of confidence that he would be able to take down the Sword Sect. However, in just a short day, Lin Gang was about to die in Jianzhou. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, before he could speak, a long sword pierced through his throat from behind. Li Ku had appeared behind Lin Gang out of nowhere, stabbing his sword into Lin Gang's throat. Lin Gang wanted to say something, but because his throat was pierced, he couldn't say a single word. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1968. Lin Gang died. First, his heart was shattered by Zhou Song's fist. Then, his throat was pierced by Li Ku's sword. Before he died, Lin Gang turned his head and looked at Li Ku unwillingly. Maybe he didn't expect that he would be killed immediately. Originally, Li Ku was supposed to be his ally, but he was persuaded by Lin Qing and turned to the Sword Gate. It was also because of this that the Blood Saber Valley had failed and he had died. There was no doubt that Lin Gang knew what his death meant to the Blood Knife Valley. Perhaps it would not be long before the Blood Knife Valley was removed from the Great Thousand World. From then on, the Blood Knife Valley would cease to exist in the Great Thousand World. He didn't dare to, but he had no choice. Lin Gang's consciousness became more and more blurry. In the end, his life was cut off and he died unwillingly. One could easily imagine the impact of Lin Gang's death on the Blood Blade Valley. Upon seeing this scene, the Blood Blade Valley members, who were still stubbornly resisting, completely lost their will to fight. There were even some who began to secretly flee. The defeat was like a landslide. As the Blood Blade Valley members fled, the Sword Sect members chased them down. With that, the Blood Blade Valley, which was already on the verge of defeat, was completely defeated. Lin Gang's death was the last straw that broke the Blood Blade Valley's back. They no longer had the strength to fight the Sword Sect. Probably not many of the Blood Blade Valley experts present would be able to escape. Looking at the scene in front of him, He Ying knew that it was over. The Blood Blade Valley was finished, and so was he. This was because after killing Lin Gang, Zhou Song and Li Ku arrived in front of He Ying. The four End Realm experts blocked off all of He Ying's paths of retreat. He Ying had no way out and was already at his limit. Now that he was facing four End Realm experts, he didn't have any chance at all. A self-mocking smile appeared on his face. He Ying also gave up on resisting. His gaze swept across Zhou Song and the others before landing on Song Xing. He said in a low voice, "Since things have already reached this stage, the winner takes all. I have nothing to say." Facing four End Realm experts at the same time, He Ying naturally knew the outcome, which was why there was no need to continue fighting. Hearing this, Song Xing didn't reply. He just looked at He Ying indifferently. Under the gazes of Song Xing and the other three, He Ying turned his gaze to Xiao Chen. A strange glint flashed in his eyes as he shouted, "Xiao Chen, I do admire you for allowing the sword sect to grow to such an extent in such a short period of time. However, I, He Ying, still do not recognize you as the sect master because you don't have the right." Without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply, He Ying secretly circulated the spiritual energy in his body and forcefully severed his 8 extraordinary meridians. After spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, He Ying's face turned pale. Then, his entire body fell straight to the ground. Even though he knew that he had no chance, He Ying wasn't willing to be captured alive. Since he had already betrayed the Sword Sect, now that Blood Blade Valley was defeated and Lin Gang was killed, there was only one outcome for him, which was death. Rather than dying in the hands of Xiao Chen, why not kill himself? That way, He Ying could still keep his last bit of dignity. Seeing He Ying kill himself, Xiao Chen also came to Song Xing's side. He looked calmly at He Ying's corpse. Xiao Chen's face didn't show much emotion. Although He Ying didn't admit that he was the sect master, this wasn't important to Xiao Chen. Whether He Ying admitted it or not, it didn't matter. He Ying died, but Xiao Chen didn't feel any joy or sadness. He didn't feel happy because he killed this traitor, nor did he feel pity because He Ying was an End Realm expert. Since they were not on the same side, it was naturally impossible for them to walk together. Therefore, Xiao Chen did not feel anything special about He Ying's death. At most, he just sighed inwardly. After all, He Ying was once the deputy lord of the Sword Gate. That was all. Looking deeply at He Ying, Xiao Chen said to Song Xing and Zhou Song, "I'll leave the rest to you guys." "Yes." Hearing this, Song Xing and Zhou Song respectfully nodded. Since the Blood Blade Valley was defeated, Xiao Chen left the rest to Song Xing and Zhou Song. Then, Xiao Chen turned to look at Li Ku. In terms of cultivation, Li Ku definitely wouldn't place Xiao Chen in his eyes. However, facing Xiao Chen's gaze for some reason, Li Ku couldn't help but feel nervous. Maybe this was Xiao Chen's identity. After all, although Xiao Chen was only at the Enlightenment realm, in terms of identity, Xiao Chen was the sect master of the Sword Sect. He wasn't someone Li Ku could offend. Hence, out of instinct, Li Ku took the initiative to bow to Xiao Chen. Li Ku greets Sect Master. As an End Realm expert, Li Ku actually took the initiative to bow to Xiao Chen. What Li Ku didn't expect was that he didn't seem to have any resistance to bowing to Xiao Chen. This was the benefit of his identity. Facing Li Ku's bow, Xiao Chen didn't act arrogant at all. He personally helped Li Ku up. Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Senior Li Ku, there's no need to be so polite." Although Li Ku joined the Sword Sect, he was still an End Realm expert. Hence, Xiao Chen still gave him face. Facing Xiao Chen's warmth, Li Ku finally heaved a sigh of relief. Before, he was really afraid that Xiao Chen wouldn't accept him. One must know that even the Blood Blade Valley was destroyed. With the strength of the Sword Sect, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to destroy the Sky Sword Sect. In fact, it would be very simple. However, from the looks of it, Xiao Chen obviously didn't have such thoughts. After helping Li Ku up, Xiao Chun and the other two stood in the air. Then, Lin Qing roughly explained the situation to Xiao Chun. After hearing that Li Ku had decided to lead the Sky Sword Sect to join the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun smiled and said to Li Ku, "Senior Li Ku, I believe that you won't regret your decision today. The Sword Sect welcomes you." Xiao Chun didn't hesitate to agree to Li Ku and the rest of the Sky Sword Sect joining. After all, only a fool would reject such a thing. Besides, Li Ku had shown enough sincerity by killing Lin Gang himself. Just as Lin Qing said, Li Ku had shown his sincerity to Xiao Chun and proved his sincerity. So, Xiao Chun naturally would not refuse. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Li Ku once again cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, sect leader." "Haha, okay, let's go back first. We'll leave the rest to Senior Tsang Xing and second senior brother. There shouldn't be any problems. After all, there's only the deceased demon sect left. They won't be able to do much." Hearing this, Xiao Chun laughed out loud. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1969. The Sky Sword Sect had surrendered and the Blood Blade Valley had been destroyed. Now, the three sects had joined forces to attack the Sword Sect. Only the deceased demon sect was left holding on bitterly. With the deceased demon sect's strength, they naturally didn't pose much of a threat to the Sword Sect. After all, the deceased demon sect only had one End Realm expert, the Blood Demon Old Man. Compared to the Sword Sect, the deceased demon sect was too weak. The following matters would be handled by Tsang Xing and Zhou Song. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Lin Qing and Li Ku didn't have any objections. Then, the group directly returned to the Sword Sect. The matter of the Sky Sword Sect's surrender was handled by Lin Qing and Li Ku, so there was nothing to worry about. Of course, they still had to take over Wuzhou. After all, since the Sky Sword Sect had surrendered, then Wuzhou would naturally be under the influence of the Sword Sect. Xiao Chun returned to the Sword Sect. As for the deceased demon sect, after a day and night of battle, the deceased demon sect had suffered heavy casualties. The Blood Demon Old Man and Wu Huan had also fought fiercely for an entire day. After a day of battle, the Blood Demon Old Man was extremely confused. It had been so long, but why was there still no news from the Blood Blade Valley and the Sky Sword Sect? His heart was filled with doubts, but because the Blood Demon Old Man only had one End Realm expert, Wu Huan, in front of him, he could still hold on. To put it bluntly, Wu Huan's strength was actually on par with the Blood Demon Old Man. The two of them couldn't do anything to each other. In a one-on-one situation, whether it was Wu Huan or the Blood Demon Old Man, it wouldn't be an easy task to kill the other. The two of them had expended a lot of energy. However, at this moment, Tsang Xing and Zhou Song finally brought people over. After dealing with the Blood Blade Valley matter, Tsang Xing and Zhou Song brought a portion of the Sword Sect experts over. Seeing the two of them appear, the Blood Demon Old Man's expression instantly changed. Wu Huan, on the other hand, revealed a relieved smile. "If you guys didn't come, I would have died from exhaustion." Looking at Tsang Xing and Zhou Song, Wu Huan said with a smile. After fighting one-on-one with the Blood Demon Old Man for more than a day, Wu Huan was indeed exhausted. Fortunately, Tsang Xing and Zhou Song had finally arrived. Tsang Xing and Zhou Song led the Sword Sect experts. At the thought of this, the Blood Demon Old Man was extremely furious. At the same time, he was also extremely puzzled. One must know that the Sword Gate had no advantage against the three great sections. How could they have defeated the Blood Blade Valley and the Heavenly Sword Sect? The Blood Demon Old Man naturally didn't know that Li Ku and the Sky Sword Sect had already surrendered to the Sword Sect. He didn't care about the ugly expression on his face. Tsang Xing and Zhou Song came to Wu Huan's side. Zhou Song smiled and said, "Look at you. Aren't you still full of energy? Cut the crap. How's the Blood Demon Old Man?" Wu Huan replied snappily. It's already settled. Only the deceased demon sect is left, Zhou Song said. The Blood Demon sect and the Sky Sword sect had already been settled. Now, only the deceased demon sect was still bitterly holding on. Hearing Zhou Song's words, Wu Huan sneered. Then let's do it. Let's settle the matter here as soon as possible. Only the deceased devil sect was left struggling to hold on. With this, the outcome was set. Following Wu Huan's words, Zhou Song and Song Xing attacked at the same time, attacking the Blood Demon Old Man. At the same time, the experts of the Sword Gate, who came with Song Xing and Zhou Song, also attacked the people of the deceased devil sect. With Zhou Song, Song Xing, and the experts of the Sword sect joining in, the situation was completely reversed. Just the deceased demon sect alone couldn't stop the Sword sect. Especially the Blood Demon Old Man. He had already fought with Wu Huan for more than a day. Now, he had to face the combined attacks of 3 End Realm experts. Very quickly, the Blood Demon Old Man was heavily injured by Zhou Song. Fighting 1 against 3, it could only be said that the Blood Demon Old Man was struggling at death's door. It was only a matter of time before he lost. While resisting with all his might, the Blood Demon Old Man complained in his heart. At the same time, he had a deep suspicion. He really couldn't understand why the Bloodblade Valley and the Sky Sword sect would lose. This was completely different from what he had expected. One must know that when the 3 sects joined forces, they had made a detailed plan. It shouldn't have been like this. It was impossible for him to be a match for Song Xing and the others. The injuries on his body became more and more serious. After a fierce battle, the Blood Demon Old Man finally couldn't take it anymore and begged for mercy. This old man surrenders. The Blood Demon Old Man knew that he wasn't a match for the 3 of them. Moreover, the deceased demon sect had suffered heavy casualties under the massacre of the experts of the Sword sect. Therefore, the Blood Demon Old Man chose to surrender. Unfortunately, after hearing the Blood Demon Old Man's words, Song Xing and the others didn't have any intention of stopping. Wu Huan even sneered. Surrender? Do you think that's possible now? Blood Demon Old Man, today is the day you fall. The Blood Demon Old Man was different from Li Ku. Therefore, in the face of his surrender, Wu Huan and the others naturally wouldn't agree. This old man would never sincerely surrender to the Sword sect. Therefore, it was better to kill him. Wu Huan and the others attacked even more fiercely. In the end, even though the Blood Demon Old Man was extremely unwilling, he was still killed by Wu Huan and the others. With the fall of the Blood Demon Old Man, the experts of the deceased demon sect naturally lost their fighting spirit. What followed was another merciless massacre. At this point, the plan of the 3 sects to join forces to attack the Sword sect was completely destroyed. The Sword sect could also be said to have completely defeated the 3 sections. They had successfully resolved this crisis. This outcome was something that many forces in the Great Thousand World didn't expect. Originally, when the 3 sects joined forces to attack the Sword sect, many forces in the Great Thousand World felt that the Sword sect would definitely be in danger this time. However, who would have thought that the Sword sect would actually win in the end? Moreover, it was a complete victory. In one fell swoop, they destroyed the attack of the 3 sections. The combat strength that the Sword sect displayed in this battle shocked many forces in the Great Thousand World. At the same time, they probably had to re-evaluate the overall strength of the Sword sect. The Sword sect's strength was getting stronger and stronger. Regarding this, the Black Emperor sect was undoubtedly the most unwilling to see this happen. In this battle, the Black Emperor sect specially sent spies to the Sword sect. Now, following the complete victory of the Sword sect, a few of the spies from the Black Emperor sect sighed helplessly as they passed the news back to the Black Emperor sect. The Sword sect's threat is getting bigger and bigger. If Sect Master still wants to attack the Sword sect, I'm afraid it won't be an easy task. Yes, I didn't expect that even Li Ku would surrender to the sword sect. There's also that Lin Qing, six-end realm expert. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1970. The few spies of the Black Emperor sect gathered together and sighed helplessly. One must know that the Sword sect and the Bazho were right next to each other. The stronger the Sword sect was, the more pressure the Black Emperor sect would face. Moreover, the Black Emperor sect had never given up on swallowing the Sword sect. However, it seemed like it would be difficult for them to take down the Sword sect. That's right, 6 End Realm experts, 8 Dao Realm experts. Along with the surrender of the Sky Sword sect, the number of sword heads in the Sword sect can probably exceed 10. The current Sword sect already has the strength of a top power. The leading Black Emperor sect elder sighed helplessly. 6 Dao Realm experts and 10 Dao Realm experts. In terms of strength, the current Swords Gate was already on par with the Black Emperor sect. In fact, in terms of Dao Realm experts, the Swords Gate even surpassed the Black Emperor sect. In this way, if the Black Emperor sect wanted to take down the Swords Gate, it would no longer be a matter of how much they had to pay. It was basically impossible, because the Swords Gate already had the strength to not fear the Black Emperor sect. If the two sects were to fight again, it would be hard to say who would emerge victorious. Furthermore, with the surrender of the Heavenly Sword sect, the Sword Gate had also obtained the land of the Wu state. In this way, the Sword Gate was equivalent to dominating the land of 2 states, and the various resources they could obtain would be at least twice as much as before. The few Black Emperor sect spies were shocked. On the other side, within the Bazho Black Emperor sect main hall, He Sui sat on the main seat. Below him were Zhao Qinfeng and the other higher-ups. Pretty much all the higher-ups of the Black Emperor sect were gathered together. However, at this moment, their expressions weren't too good. After keeping silent for a moment, He Sui was the first to speak. The Sword sect obtained a huge victory, the Sky Sword sect surrendered, and Lin Qing also joined the Sword sect. In a short 10 years, the Sword sect isn't what it used to be. The current Sword Gate already has 6 End Realm experts and 10 Sword Head level Dao Realm experts. Their strength isn't weaker than our Black Emperor sect. As he spoke, anger and helplessness surfaced in He Sui's heart. Thinking about it, it made sense. He was clearly a piece of fat meat at the edge of his mouth, but in the blink of an eye, he actually had the strength to contend against the Black Emperor sect. This made He Sui somewhat unable to accept it for a moment. Hearing He Sui's words, the upper echelons of the Black Emperor sect below were also extremely furious. However, at the same time, they were extremely helpless because all of this had already become a fact, and the Black Emperor sect could not change it. Everyone went silent. Seeing this, He Sui sighed and said, "Now, it's already impossible to take down the Sword sect, and the Sword sect might become the 6th great power. What do all of you think our Black Emperor sect should do to the Sword sect?" With the strength of the Sword sect, the neighboring Black Emperor sect naturally had to change their attitude towards the Sword sect. After all, the two sects were very close to each other, so it was time for this relationship to change. Hearing He Sui's words, Zhao Qinfeng and the other 3 Black Emperor sect princes knew what He Sui wanted to say. Actually, when he received the news, He Sui already had an answer in his heart. The Sword sect had become really strong, and He Sui also knew that the best choice for the Black Emperor sect was to change their attitude and coexist peacefully with the Sword sect. If not, it wouldn't be good for anyone. He sighed in his heart. The foundations of the Sword sect were indeed shocking. Think about it, if the Sword sect didn't have such a deep foundation, they definitely wouldn't have been able to grow so much in such a short time. No one replied, and He Sui didn't speak either. After sighing in his heart, He Sui said helplessly, "Zhao Qinfeng, make a trip to the Sword sect and congratulate them." He Sui sent one of the 4 Black Emperor sect princes, Tiger King Zhao Qinfeng, to personally congratulate the Sword sect. To put it bluntly, he was telling Shao Qin that the Black Emperor sect was willing to coexist peacefully with the Sword sect in the future. They had completely changed their attitude towards the Sword sect. Although Zhao Qinfeng was unwilling to do so, he knew that this was the best choice. He nodded helplessly and said in a low voice, "Yes." Being forced to change their attitude towards the Sword sect, the higher-ups of the Black Emperor sect were helpless, but there was nothing they could do. The Black Emperor sect had no choice but to accept the fact that the Sword sect had risen, and the other sects were the same. The strength that the Sword sect had displayed in this battle had made many forces in the Great Thousand World look at them in a new light, especially the 5 super first-rate forces. They had already placed the Sword sect on an equal footing. Moreover, the 5 super first-rate forces had already seen the Sword sect as the 6th super first-rate force. This didn't mean that they thought too highly of the Sword sect, but the Sword sect's strength had indeed entered the level of a super first-rate force. They believed that it wouldn't be long before the Sword sect became the 6th super first-rate force in the Great Thousand World. Shao Qin didn't care too much about the thoughts of the other sections. After the battle, Shao Qin immediately made arrangements for everyone in the Sky Sword sect. Of course, for those disciples who didn't meet the requirements, Shao Qin only made them odd job disciples in the Sword sect. After all, if the Sword sect wanted to develop, it naturally couldn't be without a bottom line. Shao Qin couldn't make those who weren't talented enough official disciples in the Sword sect. He could only make them odd job disciples, and this was because of Li Ku. After making arrangements for everyone in the Sky Sword sect, Shao Qin appointed Li Ku as the deputy sect master of the Sword sect. The previous 2 Dao Realm deputy sect masters of the Sword sect were the sword heads of the Sword sect. Just as Lin Qing had said, Shao Qin didn't treat Li Ku unfairly, and this made Li Ku feel touched. 6 deputy sect masters and 10 sword heads. This was the current strength of the Sword sect, and it wasn't any weaker than the Black Emperor sect. At the same time, as the Sword sect revealed its strength, in half a month, the Sword sect once again announced that the Sword sect had been promoted to a super first-rate force, becoming the 6th super first-rate force in the Great Thousand World. No one in the Great Thousand World objected to the Sword sect's promotion because the Sword sect indeed had the strength to do so. Not only did the ordinary forces not object, but even the Black Emperor sect and the other 5 super first-rate forces did not object at all. The Black Emperor sect and the other super first-rate forces even expressed their congratulations to the Sword's Gate for becoming a super first-rate force. They even sent people to congratulate the Sword's Gate. The Black Emperor sect's Zhao Qinfeng represented the Black Emperor sect to pay a visit to the Sword's Gate. This was undoubtedly to let everyone know that the Sword's Gate's promotion to a super first-rate force was already set in stone. Even the Black Emperor sect didn't have the slightest objection. At the foot of the Sword sect, Zhao Qinfeng and several experts from the Black Emperor sect walked slowly. They didn't fly directly to the Sword sect but chose to walk up. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1971. In the past, no matter who came to the Sword sect, they would definitely fly directly to the Sword sect. It was impossible for them to walk up from the foot of the mountain. Even ordinary elders of the Black Emperor sect wouldn't do that. However, this time, Zhao Qinfeng brought the people of the Black Emperor sect all the way to the foot of the Sword sect. As one of the 4 great princes of the Black Emperor sect and a true End Realm expert, Zhao Qinfeng had obediently paid a visit. This was enough to prove that the Black Emperor sect's attitude towards the Sword sect had changed. Although the experts of the Black Emperor sect who followed behind Zhao Qinfeng felt uncomfortable in their hearts, they didn't dare complain in the slightest. They weren't stupid. They knew that the sword sect was no longer the sword sect of the past. If they still dared to fly directly above the sword sect, there was no doubt that the experts of the sword sect would immediately kill them. One must know that the current sword sect didn't fear the Black Emperor sect at all. Moreover, even if the experts of the sword sect killed them, the Black Emperor sect wouldn't start a war with the sword sect. Therefore, when it was time to be honest, it was better to be honest. They arrived at the entrance of the sword sect. At this moment, there were 4 disciples guarding the entrance. When they saw Zhao Qinfeng bringing people over, the 4 disciples immediately blocked their path. Zhao Qinfeng didn't make things difficult for them and said indifferently, "Black Emperor Sect's Tiger King Zhao Qinfeng is here to pay his respects to sect leader Xiao Qin." Hearing Zhao Qinfeng's words, the 4 disciples were first stunned. However, they quickly revealed a nervous expression. At the same time, they respectfully said to Zhao Qinfeng, "Greetings, Tiger King." Although Zhao Qinfeng appeared polite, how could the 4 disciples resist the pressure that Zhao Qinfeng unconsciously emitted? Not to mention, Zhao Qinfeng's identity was enough for these disciples to look up to. Therefore, after knowing Zhao Qinfeng's identity, the 4 disciples respectfully bowed. Their attitude was simply respectful to the extreme. Zhao Qinfeng's visit was quickly reported by someone. After that, Song Xing personally came to welcome Zhao Qinfeng. At the mountain gate, Song Xing appeared in front of Zhao Qinfeng in a mere 100 breaths of time. Following the appearance of Song Xing, the 4 sword sect disciples secretly heaved a sigh of relief. There was nothing they could do about it. Previously, when they faced Zhao Qinfeng, the 4 disciples almost felt suffocated. Now that Song Xing had appeared, the 4 of them were greatly relieved. He bowed respectfully to Song Xing and said, "Greetings, Deputy Sect Master." Facing the 4 people's greetings, Song Xing nodded slightly. At the same time, he strode in front of Zhao Qinfeng and laughed loudly. "Brother Zhao, what wind blew you here today?" Zhao Qinfeng walked up the mountain, introduced himself, and even waited here for Song Xing to arrive. Without a doubt, he had already given the sword sect enough face. As such, Song Xing naturally wouldn't offend Zhao Qinfeng for no reason. Since the other party had given him face, Song Xing naturally had to treat him warmly. Song Xing took the initiative to smile and said enthusiastically. After saying that, Song Xing turned his head to look at the 4 disciples and said, "You guys are simply ridiculous. Don't you know etiquette when the Tiger King arrives? You actually made the Tiger King wait outside the mountain gate." Humph. The 4 disciples were indeed scared out of their wits, so they didn't care about being rude at all. Now that they were scolded by Song Xing, the 4 of them lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak. Of course, Song Xing's scolding was just for show for Zhao Qinfeng. After all, it was indeed a little inappropriate to leave Zhao Qinfeng outside the mountain gate. In fact, it could even be said that it was a little too much. Song Xing's scolding was also considered giving face to Zhao Qinfeng. Regarding this, Zhao Qinfeng also smiled and said, "Song Xing, don't scold them. It's just a small matter, don't take it to heart." Zhao Qinfeng took the initiative to speak up for the 4 disciples. Hearing this, Song Xing also rode his donkey down the slope and replied with a smile. "Brother Zhao, please forgive me. It's my sword sect's fault for not disciplining them properly. Come, let's not talk about this anymore. It's rare for Brother Zhao to come here. Today, you and I must not return until we're drunk. Speaking of which, we haven't drunk together for 100 years." Song Xing and Zhao Qinfeng knew each other before. There was nothing strange about this. Moreover, the 2 of them had a good relationship before. However, with the decline of the sword sect, the Black Emperor sect wanted to annex the sword sect. As a result, the 2 of them gradually lost contact with each other. Now, because of the rise of the sword sect, the Black Emperor sect knew that it was impossible to annex the sword sect. The best way was to get along well with each other. As a result, Song Xing and Zhao Qinfeng had another chance to drink together. Song Xing personally brought Zhao Qinfeng into the sword sect. After settling down the experts of the Black Emperor sect behind Zhao Qinfeng, Song Xing pulled Zhao Qinfeng to his cave to drink. In Song Xing's cave, Zhao Qinfeng and Lin Qing were sitting in a pavilion in the courtyard. They personally poured a cup of wine for Zhao Qinfeng. Song Xing said with a smile, "Brother Zhao, let me introduce you. This is Brother Lin Qing. Like me, he is also one of the vice sect masters of the sword sect." Lin Qing and Zhao Qinfeng had met before, but they weren't familiar with each other. Therefore, Song Xing only gave a simple introduction. Hearing this, Zhao Qinfeng smiled and took the initiative to greet him. "So it's Brother Lin. Brother Zhao, there's no need to be so courteous. I've long heard of the Tiger King's fame. It's my honor to meet you today. Cheers." Hearing Zhao Qinfeng's words, Lin Qing smiled and raised his cup, draining it in one gulp. Song Xing and Lin Qing warmly welcomed Zhao Qinfeng. However, from the beginning to the end, Xiao Qin didn't show up. Not showing up didn't mean that Xiao Qin didn't know that Zhao Qinfeng was coming. Rather, Xiao Qin didn't plan to meet Zhao Qinfeng immediately. After all, the strength of the sword sect was extraordinary. As the sect master, no matter what Xiao Qin did, he had to consider the sword sect. It could even be said that Xiao Qin's every action represented the entire sword sect. As a result, many things couldn't be handled as simply as before. Take Zhao Qinfeng's matter for example. As one of the four great princes of the Black Emperor sect, although his status was high, it was only on par with Song Xing and the other vice sect masters. Since Xiao Qin was the sect master of the sword sect, how could Xiao Qin immediately appear to welcome Zhao Qinfeng? Think about it, if Zhao Qinfeng had just appeared in the sword sect and Xiao Qin had personally come out to welcome him, what would the world think of this? As the sect master of the sword sect, he actually immediately went to welcome a prince. Didn't this mean that the sword sect was still afraid of the Black Emperor sect? After all, in terms of status, Song Xing was a level lower than Xiao Qin. Of course, if the sect master of the Black Emperor sect, He Sui, personally came, then Xiao Qin would definitely personally welcome him. After all, the two of them had equal status. Moreover, if He Sui personally came, Xiao Qin still had Song Xing personally come out to welcome him. To put it bluntly, this was not giving the Black Emperor sect any face. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1972. Xiao Qin didn't show up immediately. It wasn't because he was putting on airs or anything, but because the sword sect wanted to express their attitude towards the Black Emperor sect. In the cave, Xiao Qin was cultivating alone. Tomorrow, Xiao Qin would go back to see Zhao Qinfeng. Tonight, he would let Song Xing and Lin Qing deal with it. Song Xing, Lin Qing, and Zhao Qinfeng drank until late at night. In the end, Zhao Qinfeng even stayed in Song Xing's cave. This could be considered giving Zhao Qinfeng face. As for why Xiao Qin didn't show up today, Zhao Qinfeng was very clear in his heart, so he didn't ask much. He understood that the relationship between the Black Emperor sect and the Sword sect had changed. If it was said that both sides were in a state of strength before, then now, the Sword sect and the Black Emperor sect were on equal footing. Neither side was afraid of the other. Of course, neither side wanted to start a war. As a result, both sides were on equal footing. And since they were on equal footing, then as the sect master of the Sword sect, Xiao Qin naturally wasn't someone that Zhao Qinfeng could meet. After all, Zhao Qinfeng was only one of the four great princes of the Black Emperor sect. He wasn't the sect master of the Black Emperor sect. His status wasn't on the same level as Xiao Qin. His mentality had already changed. He couldn't treat the Sword sect with the same attitude as before. That method wouldn't work anymore. After a night of silence, around noon the next day, Xiao Qin met Zhao Qinfeng in the sword sect's main hall. Sitting on the main seat, Zhao Qinfeng took the initiative to bow when he saw Xiao Qin. "Greetings, Sect Master Xiao Qin. Tiger King, there's no need to be so polite. Please take a seat." Hearing this, Xiao Qin said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. After Zhao Qinfeng took his seat, Xiao Qin said, "Tiger King, what brings you to the sword sect?" "The sword sect has been promoted to a first-rate force. This time, I am here on Sect Master He Sui's orders to congratulate you. At the same time, I also wish to send Sect Master He Sui's regards to Sect Master Xiao Qin." Sect Master He Sui said that he hopes that the Sword Sect and the Black Emperor Sect can become friends. Hearing Xiao Qin's question, Zhao Qinfeng honestly replied. Zhao Qinfeng had indeed come here to express his goodwill to the Sword Sect. He also hoped that the Sword Sect and the Black Emperor Sect could become friends in the future. After all, the two sects were so close to each other. Once they started fighting, the one who would benefit would only be the other party. It would not benefit either side at all. Moreover, the Sword Sect and the Black Emperor Sect had some enmity before. But now, the Black Emperor Sect hoped that Xiao Qin would turn hostility into friendship. Zhao Qinfeng's words were very sincere. Hearing this, Song Xing and Lin Qing, who were accompanying him, looked at each other and smiled. It seemed that after this battle, the Black Emperor Sect had completely seen the strength of the Sword Sect. They knew that the current Sword Sect could no longer be bullied by others. Just like Song Xing and Lin Qing, a hint of a smile flashed across Xiao Qin's eyes when he heard Zhao Qinfeng's words. He then smiled and said, "Sect Master He Sui is too kind. I'll have to trouble Tiger King to pass a message to Sect Master He Sui. Just say that the Sword Sect and the Black Emperor Sect will always be friends. In the future, if the Black Emperor Sect needs any help, my Sword Sect will definitely not stand by and watch." The Black Emperor Sect did not wish to have any more conflicts with the Sword Sect. Similarly, Xiao Qin did not wish for the Sword Sect to have any more conflicts with the Black Emperor Sect. After all, although the current Sword Sect was not afraid of the Black Emperor Sect, if they really fought, both sects would suffer losses. This was not what He Sui wanted to see, nor was it what Xiao Qin wanted to see. They had the same thoughts in their hearts. Therefore, Xiao Qin also used this opportunity to express his attitude towards the Black Emperor Sect. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, a strange look flashed across Zhao Qinfeng's eyes. Xiao Qin was willing to let bygones be bygones and reconcile with the Black Emperor Sect so straightforwardly. This indeed surprised Zhao Qinfeng. At the same time, he also unconsciously looked at Xiao Qin in a higher light. At such a young age, Xiao Qin's Qing mansion caused Zhao Qinfeng to involuntarily exclaim in admiration. It had to be known that the reason he was able to have such an imposing manner of dismissing grudges with a smile was not because Xiao Qin or the Sword Sect were easy to bully. It was completely because Xiao Qin was looking at the big picture and did not want to have too much meaningless entanglement with the Black Emperor Sect. And this kind of thinking was exactly what He Sui had in his heart. However, He Sui had lived for so many years, and Xiao Qin had only lived for so many years. However, in terms of mental state, Xiao Qin did not seem to be much weaker than He Sui. At the very least, as the head of a sect, Xiao Qin was very qualified. He did not make things difficult for Xiao Qin in the slightest. He did not even mention anything about what had happened before, as if he had already forgotten about it. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Zhao Qinfeng immediately stood up and bowed again. "Sect Master Xiao Qin, I will definitely report your words to my Sect Master." "Haha, that's good. Yesterday, I was unable to have a drink with the Tiger King. Today, the Tiger King must stay. You and I should have a few drinks." Hearing this, Xiao Qin said with a smile. Facing Xiao Qin's invitation, Zhao Qinfeng tactfully declined. "Sect Master is too polite." There are still many things that I need to deal with in the Black Emperor sect, so I won't stay any longer. In the future, I will definitely have a drink with sect master. Zhao Qinfeng could naturally tell that Xiao Qin was just being polite. Facing Zhao Qinfeng's rejection, Xiao Qin did not insist and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, then I won't force you." Originally, Xiao Qin was just being polite. Since Zhao Qinfeng had rejected him, it was fine. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Zhao Qinfeng prepared to leave with his people. Of course, before leaving, Zhao Qinfeng also took out the congratulatory gift prepared by the Black Emperor sect. He didn't even bother to look at it. Xiao Qin knew that the congratulatory gift given by the Black Emperor sect couldn't be that valuable. It was just for show. Xiao Qin was right. The congratulatory gift given by the Black Emperor sect was indeed not anything valuable. There were even many of them that Xiao Qin had given to the Black Emperor sect as compensation for the battle 10 years ago. Now, the Black Emperor sect had returned them untouched. When Zhao Qinfeng left, Song Xing personally sent him off. As for Xiao Qin, it was obviously impossible for him to personally send Zhao Qinfeng off. Zhao Qinfeng's arrival as a representative of the Black Emperor sect meant that the relationship between the Sword sect and the Black Emperor sect would be eased for a long time. At the very least, based on the current situation, neither side wanted to start a war. This way, Xiao Qin could use most of his energy to deal with other matters, such as the matter of the Wuzhou. Although the Wuzhou had already become the territory of the Sword sect with the surrender of the Heavenly Sword sect, they had only just taken over. The Sword sect's control over the Wuzhou was actually very weak. There were even many forces within the Wuzhou that didn't listen to the Sword sect. Therefore, the matter of the Wuzhou needed to be resolved as soon as possible. Xiao Qin didn't want anything to happen in his backyard. Completely controlling the Wuzhou was the most important task of the Sword sect. They had to stabilize and control the Wuzhou in a short period of time. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1973. The matter of Wuzhou was very important to the Sword sect. After sending Zhao Qinfeng off, Xiao Qin immediately called Song Xing, Lin Qing, and the others over. In the Great Hall, Xiao Qin looked at the people below and said, "Wuzhou has just submitted and there are many things that need to be taken care of. As such, I plan to send someone to oversee Wuzhou and try to completely subdue it in the shortest amount of time." The situation in Wuzhou was somewhat different from the Jian province. It could be said that Wuzhou was more chaotic than the Jian province. After all, the Sky Sword sect was the only first-rate faction in Wuzhou. Later on, the Blood Blade Valley forcefully intervened, causing the situation in Wuzhou to be extremely chaotic. It must be known that the Sky Sword sect's strength could only be considered to be at the bottom of the first-rate factions. As such, it was naturally very difficult for the various factions in Wuzhou to truly submit. It was unlike the Jian province, where the Sword sect had the final say. In the face of the Sword sect's orders, the various factions in the Jian province did not dare to object at all, nor did they dare to feign compliance but secretly oppose. However, Wuzhou was different. It was already very difficult for the Sky Sword sect to truly control Wuzhou. In addition, in this battle, the Sky Sword sect had surrendered to the Sword sect, causing the various factions in Wuzhou to be even more chaotic. Therefore, Xiao Qin planned to forcefully suppress the situation in Wuzhou and try to resolve the problem in the shortest amount of time. As for those factions that did not listen, they would be directly destroyed. As for those factions that were willing to submit to the Sword sect, they would naturally be given some benefit. Carrot and stick. This was Xiao Qin's method of dealing with Wuzhou. Song Xing, Zhou Song, and the other 5 deputy sect leaders did not object to Xiao Qin's decision. Indeed, this was the fastest way to resolve Wuzhou. However, if this was to be done, there had to be an expert overseeing Wuzhou. Therefore, Shao Chun had gathered everyone here to discuss who was more suitable to be sent to Wuzhou. Without much hesitation, Song Xing quickly spoke up after hearing Shao Chen's word. Sect leader, I feel that Li Ku is the most suitable candidate. After all, he understands Wuzhou. He suggested that Li Ku go. No matter what, Li Ku had once been the leader of the Sky Sword sect. He was clearly the person who understood Wuzhou the most. For example, Li Ku had a better understanding of the situation of the various powers in Wuzhou than the others present. Thus, it would be easier for Li Ku to go and handle these matters. Hearing Song Xing's words, Shao Chun nodded slightly. Li Ku was indeed the best candidate. Shao Chun had thought of this before. Moreover, from the beginning, Shao Chun had planned to let Li Ku be in charge of Wuzhou. However, in Shao Chun's opinion, Li Ku alone might not be enough. They needed to send another person at the level of a deputy sect leader. After all, with the current situation of Wuzhou, it was hard to rely on one end-realm expert to intimidate them. Moreover, Shao Chun wanted to take over Wuzhou in a short amount of time. Thus, he naturally needed to send another person to help Li Ku. Deputy sect leader Li Ku is naturally the best choice. However, I feel that we should send 2 deputy sect leaders to intimidate them. Looking at everyone, Shao Chun opened his mouth and said, 2 deputy sect leaders were needed to suppress them. Song Xing and the others exchanged glances. Then, Lin Qing took the initiative to speak up. Since that is the case, sect leader, let me and Li Ku go. Lin Qing volunteered. Hearing that, Shao Chun nodded his head. Okay, then I'll have to trouble the 2 of you with the Wuzhou matters. Don't worry, sect leader, we won't let you down. Hearing Shao Chun's words, Lin Qing and Li Ku both cupped their hands and bowed, sending out 2 deputy sect leaders at once. At the same time, Shao Chun was shocked. Lin Qing and Li Ku brought the experts of the sword sect and rushed to Wuzhou on the same day. As for Wuzhou, Shao Chun naturally hoped to have it firmly in his hands. After all, a state was really important to the sword sect. Just as Lin Qing and Li Ku were rushing to Wuzhou with their people, the leaders of the various factions were all gathered in the Qin family residence within Wuzhou. The Qin family was an old family power in Wuzhou, and they weren't weak. They were just a step away from becoming a first-rate power. The Qin family had a total of 3 old ancestors. The 3 of them were all at the Dao realm. Moreover, one of them was at the peak of the Dao realm and was just a step away from breaking through to the End realm. Once this old ancestor broke through to the End realm, then without a doubt, the Qin family would be able to reach the heavens in one step and become a first-rate power. Their strength was only second to the Heaven Sword sect, which was why, along with the surrender of the Heaven Sword sect, the various powers in Wuzhou all saw the Qin family as the leader. This time, the Qin family gathered the various powers in Wuzhou. All of a sudden, the sect leaders of the various powers all gathered at the Qin family. At this moment, in the Qin family hall, dozens of people sat together. On the main seat there were 3 old men. The 3 of them were the old ancestors of the Qin family. Under normal circumstances, the 3 old ancestors wouldn't bother about Qin family matters. They would just focus on breaking through to the End realm and making the Qin family a first-rate power. However, this matter was really important and concerned the future of Wuzhou. This was why the 3 old ancestors all came out of seclusion and gathered the various sect leaders. His eyes swept the people present. The old man in the middle was the one who had the highest chance of breaking through to the End realm. He was called Qin Kuan. Sweeping his gaze across the crowd, Qin Kuan said in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, I'm sure all of you are aware of the news of the battle in the Jian province. The Sky Sword sect has surrendered to the Swords Gate, and Li Ku has become one of the 6 vice presidents of the Swords Gate. Furthermore, the Swords Gate has been promoted to a super first-rate force a few days ago. After this battle ends, I believe the Sword sect won't let us off. So, what should we do when facing the sword sect? Submit or resist? You all should have a plan in your hearts, Qin Kun said slowly. He didn't beat around the bush and directly said the reason why he gathered everyone here. The Heaven Sword sect had submitted to the Sword sect. With that, as the overlord of Wuzhou, after the Heaven Sword sect submitted to the Sword sect, then logically speaking, Wuzhou should also be under the Sword sect. However, the Qin clan was clearly unwilling to see this scene. After all, this was an opportunity for the Qin clan to develop. Without the Sky Sword sect, the Qin clan was undoubtedly the strongest force in the Wu province. If the Qin clan could take advantage of this opportunity to control the Wu province in one fell swoop and become the new overlord of the Wu province, it would definitely be beneficial for the Qin clan's development. However, to control Wuzhou, the Qin family had a crucial problem in front of them, which was the Sword sect. It was obvious that the Sword Gate would not let go of such a big piece of fat meat like the Wu province. Thus, how to deal with the Sword Gate became the problem that the Qin family needed to consider the most. Based on the strength on the surface, the Qin family was definitely not a match for the Sword Gate. Thus, this time, the Qin family had gathered all the sect leaders within the Wu province to discuss this matter. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1974. The Qin family wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth and snatch Wuzhou from the Sword sect. One had to say that they were asking for death. Upon hearing Qin Kun's words, the expressions of the many sect leaders present changed slightly. Obviously, there was no one present who did not know about the Sword Gate. It was one of the top 6 powers in the world. They had 6 End-Realm deputy sect leaders. Compared to the Sword sect, the people present were just trash. No one dared to go against the Sword's Gate. After all, the strength of the Sword's Gate was there for all to see. Furthermore, according to the various things that had happened before, the new sect master of the Sword's Gate was not a soft-hearted person. On the contrary, he was decisive in killing. Looking at the fate of the Blood Blade Valley and the deceased demon sect, it was clear that almost all of them were killed. Even if there were fish that escaped the net, it would only be 2 or 3 small cat. They really did not have the courage to go against the Sword's Gate. Looking at the changes in the faces of the Sword's Gate, Qin Kun and the other 2 Qin clan's old ancestors knew that these people were extremely afraid of the Sword's Gate. They exchanged glances with one another before Qin Kun opened his mouth and said, "What's wrong? Are you all scared out of your wits? Are you all so afraid of the Sword sect?" Qin Kun's tone was filled with disdain. However, the sect leaders didn't care about that at all. What a joke! Compared to their lives, what was this bit of mockery? Moreover, their strength wasn't a match for the Sword sect. Were they going to send themselves to death? None of the people present were fools. On the contrary, to be able to reach the position of the head of a sect, one was definitely a person of great intelligence. Although Qin Kun did not say it clearly, everyone knew that the Qin family was eyeing the entire Wuzhou. They wanted to use this chance to control Wuzhou. However, the sect leaders didn't think highly of the Qin family's thoughts. What a joke! Everyone could see that the Sword sect was determined to get Wuzhou. For the Qin family to want to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, they were asking for death. None of the people present dared to agree with Qin Kun. In fact, no one dared to go against the Sword sect. Looking at the expressions of everyone present, Qin Kun coldly smiled and said, "This Qin originally thought that all of you were hot-blooded, but I didn't expect that a mere Sword sect would actually scare all of you to this extent. Let me tell everyone the truth. The Qin family will not hand over this Wuzhou to others. We are all powers born and raised in Wuzhou. Are we going to let an outsider rule Wuzhou? My Qin clan will be the first to disagree." Moreover, 3 days ago, this old man had already sent people to the Bajou. I believe that the Black Emperor sect is very willing to cooperate with us. The Qin family wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, but they knew that there was a huge gap between their strength and the sword sex, so the Qin family naturally wouldn't be so foolish as to seek their own destruction. Thus, they had to find a powerful backer. And in the surrounding provinces, the only one that had the ability to contend against the sword sect was the Black Emperor sect. Thus, the Qin family naturally set their sights on the Black Emperor sect. They wanted to use the Black Emperor sect to restrain the sword sect. Of course, the Qin family also knew that they couldn't trap a wolf without sacrificing a child. Thus, this time they sent people to the Black Emperor sect. The Qin family was willing to use a third of the various resources in Wuzhou in exchange for the protection of the Black Emperor sect. They wanted to use the Black Emperor sect to resist the sword sect. Hearing Qin Kuan's words, all the sect leaders were stunned. Then, the expressions in the eyes of a few people changed slightly. The Qin family alone obviously couldn't stop the sword sect. However, if the Black Emperor sect was added, then it was hard to say. Some people were already tempted. Seeing this, Qin Kuan and the other two smiled slightly. It had to be said that the Qin family's appetite was very big, and they were also very bold. They actually wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth from the sword sect's hands and snatch the entire Wuzhou. However, the Qin family clearly didn't know that the Black Emperor sect had already expressed goodwill towards the sword sect. Just as the Qin family was gathering all the powers in Wuzhou, the Black Emperor sect's Zhao Qinfeng had just left the sword sect. Under such circumstances, what choice would the Black Emperor sect make? The Qin family clearly didn't know about this and thought that the Black Emperor sect and the sword sect were still enemies. Little did they know that after the sword sect revealed its true strength, the Black Emperor sect's attitude completely changed. They only thought that the Black Emperor sect and the sword sect had a battle 10 years ago. As a result, the two sects definitely had enmity, but who would have thought that enmity was nothing in the face of benefits and the overall situation? Furthermore, the sword sect and the Black Emperor sect weren't considered mortal enemies, so there was naturally nothing that couldn't be resolved. Just as the Qin family was still fantasizing about snatching food from the tiger's mouth and taking the opportunity to control the Wuzhou, the Qin family elder that was sent out 3 days ago had also arrived at the Black Emperor sect. Within the great hall of the Black Emperor sect, He Sui and the two princes sat upright in the hall. Below them, an elder of the Qin family respectfully bowed and said, "I am Qin Zhao of the Qin family of the Wuzhou. Greetings, sect leader He Sui and the two princes." Hearing Qin Zhao's words, He Sui said indifferently, "Wuzhou Qin family? Why have you come all the way to my Black Emperor sect?" He Sui naturally looked down on the Qin family. A small family that wasn't even a first-rate power wasn't even worth mentioning in the eyes of the Black Emperor sect. Qin Zhao could sense the disdain and indifference in He Sui's words. However, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit dissatisfied. Hearing He Sui's words, he hurriedly replied respectfully, "I'm here to specially represent the Qin family to rely on the Black Emperor sect. The Qin family is willing to become a subsidiary force of the Black Emperor sect." "Oh, interesting. Then what does your Qin family need my Black Emperor sect to do?" Hearing Qin Zhao's words, He Sui said with interest. The Qin family had come all the way to the Black Emperor sect and expressed their willingness to become a subsidiary force of the Black Emperor sect. Even Qin Zhao himself wouldn't believe that there wasn't a request. Facing He Sui's question, Qin Zhao didn't beat around the bush and immediately replied, "My Qin family wants to control the Wuzhou and needs the help of the Black Emperor sect. In this case, the Qin family is willing to share 1/3 of the cultivation resources of the Wuzhou to the Black Emperor sect. To put it bluntly, asking the Black Emperor sect to help the Qin family control the Wuzhou was asking the Black Emperor sect to deal with the sword sect." Hearing Qin Zhao's words, He Sui immediately laughed out loud. Haha, not understanding why He Sui suddenly laughed, Qin Zhao respectfully stood below with his head lowered. Even though he was puzzled in his heart, he didn't dare to show the slightest disrespect. The laughter echoed in the hall. After a long while, He Sui stopped laughing and looked at Qin Zhao with a spurious smile. Your Qin family wants to control the Wuzhou, so you came to find my Black Emperor sect. You want my Black Emperor sect to help you resist the pressure of the Sword sect, right? Yes. Hearing this, Qin Zhao honestly nodded. Seeing Qin Zhao nod, He Sui smiled and said, "What a good plan. However, your Qin family should know that the Tiger King of my Black Emperor sect is currently in the Sword sect. He is representing me to congratulate the Sword sect on its promotion to a first-rate force. Do you think I will agree to your Qin family's request? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1975. He Sui looked at Qin Zhao with a smile that wasn't a smile. Hearing those words, Qin Zhao's face instantly paled. He wasn't stupid and naturally understood the meaning behind He Sui's words. His body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Looking at He Sui, who was seated on the main seat, Qin Zhao didn't know what to say for a moment. The Black Emperor sect had taken the initiative to express goodwill to the Sword's Gate. In this way, it meant that the Qin clan's wishful thinking had completely failed. Not only would the Black Emperor sect not help the Qin clan, it was even very likely that they would tell the Sword's Gate about this, and use this to sell a favor to the Sword's Gate. The expression in his eyes drastically changed as he looked at Qin Zhao. He Sui smiled and said, "Qin Zhao, there's a saying that a greedy person is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Your Qin clan is like that. With the current situation, your Qin clan actually wants to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. I have to say, you really don't know what's good for you. Men, capture Qin Zhao and send him to the Sword sect." It was exactly as Qin Zhao had guessed. He Sui had no intention of helping the Qin clan. Perhaps a mere Wuzhou wasn't worth the Black Emperor sect offending the Sword sect. The Sword sect had already completely matured. To the Black Emperor sect, offending the Sword sect for a mere Wuzhou was not worth it. Right now, the Black Emperor sect only wanted to coexist peacefully with the Sword sect. Following He Sui's words, one of the Black Emperor sect's princes in the hall immediately took action. Qin Zhao did not have the slightest ability to resist and was captured by him. Of course, it was the same for the people from the Qin clan who came with Qin Zhao. After capturing Qin Zhao and the rest of the Qin clan members, He Sui immediately arranged for people to send Qin Zhao and the rest to the Sword sect. He handed them over to Shao Chen and allowed Shao Chen to do whatever he wanted with them. The Qin clan could be said to have tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. A day later, a martial marquis from the Sword sect and the Black Emperor sect arrived with Qin Zhao and the rest. Originally, he was teaching Luan in the cave. At this moment, Song Xing quickly walked in and whispered a few words to Shao Chen. Hearing this, a smile appeared on Shao Chen's face as he turned his head to look at Luan and said, Luan, you cultivate by yourself. Daddy has some matters to attend to and needs to leave for a while. After speaking, Shao Chen and Song Xing left the cave together. In the Sword sect main hall, a martial marquis from the Black Emperor sect escorted Qin Zhao and the others to the main hall. Looking at Shao Chen, who was sitting on the main seat, the martial marquis cupped his hands and bowed. "Greetings, Sect Master Shao." After bowing respectfully, the martial marquis also truthfully told Shao Chen about Qin Zhao and the others heading to the Black Emperor sect. After hearing the martial marquis's words, Shao Chen smiled and said, "Thank you, sect leader He Sui. I will definitely remember this favor." He Sui had sent Qin Zhao and the others to the Sword sect. Shao Chen naturally had to accept this favor. Hearing this, the martial marquis cupped his hands and replied, Sect Master Xiao is too polite. After ordering people to first arrange for the people of the Black Emperor sect to rest, Xiao Chen looked at Qin Zhao after the people of the Black Emperor sect left. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, Qin Zhao's expression was already ashen. After coming to the sword sect, Qin Zhao could almost imagine his own outcome, as well as the entire Qin family's outcome. Looking at Qin Zhao, Xiao Chen was very calm. There was even a faint smile on his face. However, no matter how one looked at it, this smile felt abnormally cold. For a person to be so stupid, it really makes people speechless. A small Qin family wants to occupy the entire Wu state, huh? With a sneer, Xiao Chen said indifferently. With the Qin family's strength, wanting to occupy the entire Wu state was indeed thinking too much. He couldn't be bothered to ask Qin Zhao any questions. In any case, the Black Emperor sect had already told him everything he needed to know. Therefore, Xiao Chen had nothing to say to Qin Zhao and the others. With that, without waiting for Qin Zhao to reply, Xiao Chen looked at Song Xing and said, "Tell Lin Qing that the Qin family doesn't need to exist anymore. As for these people, kill them as well." Without even asking, Xiao Chen had already sentenced the Qin family to death. Hearing this, Song Xing respectfully nodded in agreement. Following which, Qin Zhao and the others were dragged out of the main hall by a group of sword sect experts and executed on the spot. Xiao Chen didn't put a mere Qin family in his eyes. This time, the Qin family's plan to rely on the Black Emperor sect to fight against the sword sect had completely failed. Very quickly, Song Xing followed orders and passed on Xiao Chen's message to Lin Qing and Li Ku, who were already in Wu state. After receiving Song Xing's message, Lin Qing and Li Ku, who had already entered Wu state and arrived at the former location of the Sky Sword sect, sat in the main hall of the Sky Sword sect and looked at Li Ku with a smile. Lin Qing said indifferently, "This Qin family is really interesting. Their courage has actually grown to such an extent." "They don't know what's good for them," Li Ku replied indifferently. Li Ku was naturally not unfamiliar with the Qin family. As a power second only to the Sky Sword sect in Wu state, the Qin family was indeed ambitious. Li Ku had known this before. However, this time, the Qin family's ambition was simply too great. It could even be said that they were seeking their own death. They didn't even look at the strength of the sword sect. They dared to covet the entire Wu state. If this wasn't seeking their own death, what was it? According to Xiao Chen's meaning, the Qin family didn't need to exist anymore. Xiao Chen had already sentenced the Qin family to death. At the same time, Qin Zhao and the others had also been killed. However, at this moment, the people of the Qin family still didn't know about this. At this moment, the people of the Qin family were still fantasizing about their lives after taking over Wu state. They were still fantasizing about how to become a first-rate force. With the help of the Black Emperor sect, the people of the Qin family thought that they would definitely succeed this time. However, they didn't expect that the Black Emperor sect had already sold the Qin family out. Moreover, they had sold them out completely. A great disaster was about to befall them. It was laughable that the entire Qin family was still daydreaming. In the backyard of the Qin family, Qin Kun and the other two patriarchs were sitting together, drinking and chatting. "Is there still no news from Qin Zhao and the others?" one of the patriarchs asked. When he heard this, the other old ancestor smiled. "They have probably reached the Black Emperor sect. I think there will be news soon." The moment he said this, the old ancestor turned around and looked at Qin Kun. "Big brother, if our Qin family can successfully control Wu state, I believe that you won't be far from breaking through to the End Realm." Qin Kun was only a step away from the End Realm. When he heard this, he smiled. "How is it so easy to break through to the End Realm? However, if we have enough resources, I have some confidence. Haha, when Big Brother breaks through to the End Realm, our Qin family will be a first-rate power." When they heard this, the two of them smiled. Qin Kun and the other two were still daydreaming. What they didn't know was that Lin Qing and Li Ku had already led a bunch of sword sect experts over to the Qin family. A calamity was about to descend, but the Qin family didn't know anything at all. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.